Hey guys. Tonight's story starts with the sound of tiny bells that won't shut up, a headache shaped like a crown, and a pair of shoes so pointy you could use them to pick locks. You wake up on a cold stone floor, dressed like a chessboard that lost an argument, and every time you move, your outfit tattles on you with jingles. There's no bed, no coffee, no dignity. Just a room full of nobles, staring like you're a trout someone slapped onto a platter for entertainment. And somehow, this is your job now. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. I'd greatly appreciate it. And take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake to bells, not church bells or a polite wind chime. These are attached to your skull by way of a cap that pinches, and they announce every twitch like you're a horse pulling an ice cream cart. Your cheek is pressed to cold stone. Your mouth tastes like old wine and iron. Somewhere close by, a fire crackles in a grate too small for anything but bragging. The room hums with low voices, silk on silk, the shuffle of shoes that never have to see mud. You lift your head and the bells tattle on you again. 100 eyes turn. Not kind eyes, not cruel. Evaluating. Like you're a fish someone brought in from the river and set on a plate to see if it twitches. A man in red with a neck like a candlestick leans toward you. His smile is tidy and contains no joy. Rise, he says, like this is a prayer. You try. Your joints disagree, and your cap rings with every protest. People in the room chuckle softly, like glass tapping together. Not laughter, not yet. A boy with a feathered hat whispers, "There it is," as if he's spotted a rare bird. Someone else mutters, "Small bells, small brains." A woman fans herself with something dead and perfumed. You are on your feet, and the room tilts, the way rooms do when they belong to someone else. There's a table long enough to seat a family of deer. Candles drip wax into low puddles that look like they're trying to escape. Along the far wall, a tapestry shows a hunt frozen mid-triumph, dogs forever leaping, a stag forever learning about gravity. At the center, under a canopy the color of fresh bruises, sits a man with a beard that could be negotiated with. He wears a crown like a headache and holds a cup like a threat. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. The room is his gaze, and you are in it. "You're fool," the candlestick neck announces, voice slick. He gestures at you as though unveiling a plate of steaming turnips. As requested. That's it. That's the explanation. Not where you came from. Not why bells. Not why everyone smells like nutmeg and old fur. Just your designation, like a tag on a kennel. You open your mouth out of habit. Nothing useful comes out. Air, maybe panic. The bells fill the gap, ringing bright and betraying. Someone snorts. A page in blue hops once delighted, then pretends he didn't. The man with the crown finally glances up, one eye like a coin at the bottom of a well. He doesn't smile. He tips his cup toward you a fraction, as if to say you've been weighed and could possibly be measured later. The fool. The room echoes softly, like a prayer they don't believe in but enjoy saying. Your clothes are wrong. Not your clothes, strictly speaking. These belong to the idea of you, not you. The fabric scratches where it should comfort, and pulls where it should let go. A diamond pattern splits your body into rival districts that refuse to negotiate. The shoes come to points that make you feel like you're standing on polite daggers. Every time you shift, a belt of tin bells launches a campaign for attention. You've never been louder by accident in your life. A platter passes, and the smell of meat makes your stomach remember it exists. You realize you haven't eaten in some amount of time the body resents. Your throat is dry enough to creak. There's no cup for you. There's no stool either. You are decoration, upright and portable. You glance toward the fire, toward the door, toward anything like a corner you could own. Corners here belong to tapestries and secrets. The red man speaks again. Entertain. A single word, easy to carry, heavy to drop. The crowd lifts their faces the way people do when priests raise bread. You feel your mouth shape a joke it hasn't met yet. Your hands, treacherous diplomats, offer an awkward bow. The bells applaud your failure. You try the simplest thing you can think of. Slip on your own long shoe. The point catches the uneven flagstone that's been waiting centuries for your mistake, and down you go. It isn't graceful. It isn't even theatrical. Your knee cracks the floor, your palm skids, and your cap smacks your eyebrow with the enthusiasm of a boxer. The bells sing like birds at a funeral. The hall gasps, then exhales, and the first real laugh happens. It rolls over you like warm water poured from a height designed to humiliate. They don't laugh because you're funny. They laugh because the floor met you halfway. They laugh because pain is a language everybody speaks fluently. The boy with the feathered hat claps with both hands, bright and pure, as if success had occurred. The queen, if that's what the woman in frost-colored silk is, tilts her head and smiles the way a cat does at a window full of birds. The king lifts his empty hand, and the laughter fades obediently. "Stand," he says. Not cruel, not kind. You obey. He watches with mild interest like a man observing a new kind of squash. "What is your name?" You tell him. "The one your mother gave you. The one that fits. The one that's taken care of you in the absence of anything else." It lands in the room and evaporates instantly. The red man smirks. Someone repeats it, wrong on purpose. The king nods once and discards it with a blink. "You'll be called what you are," he says. "Fool." It's not a sentence, it's a filing. A dog saunters through like a rumor in fur, ribs under skin like the bones of a boat. He sniffs your shoes and decides you're not food. Lucky you. The butcher laughs from somewhere near the back and licks grease from his thumb with a sound that registers in your molars. A musician plucks a string and immediately regrets it. The note hangs like a question no one can answer without being punished. The red man produces a pear from nowhere, as men like him often do, and tosses it at your face. You catch it, by reflex or miracle. A murmur. He raises an eyebrow. Another pear follows, then a third, then a knife. You juggle because the alternative is bleeding. The pears are obstinate, heavy at one end, bruised at the other. The knife is honest about its intentions. You keep the rhythm, because everything depends on it. Your fingers learning a poem they didn't realize they knew. Sweat runs into your eyebrow. The bells keep time. People lean forward. A slice of silence spreads under the trick, tender and dangerous. The king's finger twitches, and the red man throws in a cup. Too light, slippery, rude. You try to include it. It flies free and rings against the floor, gilt on stone. Laughter snaps shut around the sound like a trap. One of the pears kisses your ear, and the knife reminds you what it could do to your face if you forget about it for even a breath. You bail, let everything fall, and bow so low your back pops in protest. The room claps. Not applause. Permission to stop. The king doesn't smile. He gestures to a servant, who brings him something on a plate and sets it down with the veneration usually reserved for relics. The king breaks his gaze from you, and the world starts again. Serving boys step into their rehearsed paths. Wine redistributes itself into cups that were never empty enough to complain. You're no longer the center of the universe. That feels like the first mercy of the day. You edge toward the wall the way a deer edges toward the trees after forgetting the word forest. You find a shadow, a strip of stone that remembers how to be cool. Your heart bangs on your ribs for release documents. A girl in a rough apron passes you, carrying a dish larger than her ambitions, and she dares a quick look at your face. Her expression says, without saying, that she's seen harder days in less fine rooms. The expression after that says, "Don't drop anything." The red man is at your elbow again, smile still tidy, eyes newly interested in your fear. You'll attend at meals, you'll wake when told, and sleep when allowed. Speak when spoken to, unless you're interesting. Then speak until someone important tires of you. He straightens your cap without kindness. Never make a joke about the Queen's brother's height. You'll think of one. Kill it. You nod. The bells agree loudly on your behalf. You hate them already. You hate how they tell the room you exist. You hate how they make it impossible to be small. You imagine tearing them off, quiet by quiet, stashing them under the hearthstones and pretending the floor ate music. You imagine it for exactly 1 second, and then you remember the knife whistling past your cheek, and you imagine nothing for a while. On the table, a roasted bird slumps in glory. A knife carves it into secrets. The smell is church. Your mouth fills with a loyalty you cannot afford. A slice appears near your knee, as if delivered by a helpful ghost. The girl in the rough apron slides it there with the stealth of a saint and refuses to look at you. You don't say thank you out loud. You don't say anything at all. You inhale it in 2 chews and learn you've forgotten how to eat quietly. The king drinks. Someone laughs. Someone else stops. The fire burns in its arrogant grate, too small to do anything but pose, and the tapestry dogs chase the forever deer into the forever trees. The red man steps away. The bells settle. You lean against the stone and let the cold climb your spine. This is the moment, you tell yourself, in which things are decided. The cap stays on. The bells will ring. The word fool has landed on you like a bird that doesn't plan to leave. No one laughs now. That would be for you to cause later, if you survive the day. For the moment you are a prop that remembers it used to have its own name. You swallow a breath that tastes like smoke and pear and the inside of your fear, and you tell yourself something true and small enough to carry in your fist. You are here. You have bells, and they won't let anyone forget it. They don't tell you when your first performance starts. You find out when a trumpet shrieks like a startled goose, and a pair of pages push you forward with the unapologetic efficiency of people who have never been shoved in their lives. The hall is louder now, drunker, slick with meat and light. The tapestries have stopped pretending and are just watching. You feel every bell on your cap announce your entrance like a one-man riot. Someone claps, not for you, but because clapping is what hands do when cups aren't in them. A jester is supposed to begin with a flourish. You attempt one and produce a shrug in brocade. Your mouth goes dry. Your brain begins tossing up joke fragments like driftwood, swans, legs, weather. None of it lands in a shape that could be called safe. You pick the smallest one. My lords, you say, which sounds too formal for someone dressed like a chessboard. If wit were bread, I'd be. You pause, already hating where this is going. Overbaked. A silence falls against your teeth. It isn't hostile exactly. It's patient. Somewhere, a spoon falls. The sound lands with more grace than your sentence. A laugh does come, from your left, but it's the delicate, slant-eyed kind that means the opposite. A woman speaks to her neighbor behind a fan made from an animal that would be offended if it knew. Bless, she murmurs, like she's just watched a toddler run into a wall. You swallow and try again. The king's beard is so fine, if you spun it, you could weave a carpet for Mercy to wipe its feet. That should be something. It isn't. The king blinks once, as if a moth brushed his eye. You feel heat crawl up your neck and try to hide beneath the collar. The bells betray you with a happy little shiver. There are rules here you didn't get. No one provided the pamphlet titled, when to mock the crown and when to die. You reach for the oldest trick you know, the one bodies understand when words fail. You trip. No one taught you how to fall well either. Your long shoe disagrees with a sticky patch of gravy at the edge of the high table and decides monogamy with the floor is its calling. Your knee meets stone with a thud that vibrates in the wine. You sprawl, arms wild, cap bells cheering like traitors. A platter skids, a pheasant rotates gently into the afterlife, and a page leaps to save a candlestick like it's a beloved aunt. Laughter arrives in a wave so quick it feels rehearsed. It starts with the young, the feather hat boy, a cluster of bare-ankled squires, and rushes outward. Older voices join once it's clear you aren't dead. The laugh is bright and sharp and a little hungry. You scramble up, bowing deeply to hide your face and also to check if your dignity is still attached. It isn't. You go for a second bow, buy yourself another heartbeat, and consider faking a faint. Before you can, something soft thumps your shoulder, then your back. You turn, expecting a friendly hand, or at least a napkin, and catch a turnip to the ribs. It's not thrown hard, just confidently. The hall inhales, and then it's open season. Another root sails past your ear like a blunt comet. A splotch of gravy finds your sleeve. A wedge of cheese lands on your shoe and clings there like it has been through worse and has the letters from home to prove it. You've never been pelted by an entire food pyramid before. It's educational. You try smiling, wide and foolish. The nobles adore it. You spin to make a show of it and step right into a miracle. A spill of wine, a smear of fat, and the small secret slope of the hall all meet to conspire against you. This time, your feet perform a complicated dance known as you don't know how to stand. You pinwheel, capture a stool with the back of your calf, and sit without meaning to with a noise that feels genealogical. The stool collapses. A chorus of delighted pity breaks out as the motley heap that is you slides into a shallow wash of mud near the doors. Mud that shouldn't be inside but is, because people forget their boots and the weather refused to be left out. Cold bleeds through your hose. The mud is thin, sneaky, exactly wrong. It spreads itself with artistic ambition. You blink grit from your lashes and look up at the ceiling as if it could lower a rope. It doesn't. You're an object lesson in gravity now, a tale about hubris and varnish. Someone whistles. The feather hat boy stands on his bench, face pink from laughter, and salutes you with a peeled onion like it's a prize. A turnip bounces off your back with a sound you will remember whenever anyone says the word turnip for the rest of your life. It's astounding how perfectly a turnip can announce that you are a fool. You think about staying down. The floor, for all its treachery, is honest. Then you remember there is a king, and kings prefer their toys vertical. You gather yourself with the dignity of a wet cat and rise in increments. The mud makes a thoughtful schlip as it lets you go. Your bells tinkle soothingly, as if offering a blanket apology on behalf of your choices. You need something to turn this. Some gesture, some scrap of control you can hold and pretend is a decision. The first weapon your hand finds is a spoon. Useless. The second is a turnip someone hasn't thrown yet. You seize it and lift it as if it's a skull in a tragedy. Alas, poor tuber. You open your mouth and your brain, having watched you drown, decides to help. A noble root, you say, tasting mud and regret, born to be soup and never asked. The hall wobbles on the thin ice of maybe. You give the turnip a little bow. It knows more of the earth than any of us know of ourselves. You cradle it to your chest like a lost child and then, gently, bite it. Raw. It fights back. Your jaw squeaks. Someone snorts wine through their nose. Laughter rises again, rounder this time, warmer, but still the kind that leaves you outside the fire. You push into it. If they won't laugh with you, you can at least steer where their laughter lands. You slip the chewed turnip into your cap like it's a crown jewel, and the bells tattle to the whole room. You teeter toward the high table. make an elaborate genuflection that would embarrass a saint, and offer the king a second, unbitten root with both hands. He takes it not like a gift, but like a curiosity, turns it, smirks the width of a quill scratch, and sets it on the table, as if to say, "There, I've done my mercy for the month." A lord with a jaw like a brick leans back and calls, "Dare the pig trough, fool." The hall brightens. The pig trough is a massive wooden cradle near the side door where kitchen scraps go to die before they are reborn as pigs. It glistens with a sheen too complicated to name. You look at it. You look at the door right next to it that leads to air and maybe a night you can survive. You look back at the king. He is not looking at you. Someone else is. One of the scullery girls. Elbows raw from water. She shakes her head the tiniest amount, which is to say, she's just reminded you you're made of meat. You bow again, low enough to hear your spine argue, and veer away from the trough at the last second into a stumble that ends in a practiced split. The bells go wild. Pain blooms across your thighs like a spring you did not order. Laughter cracks open one more time. You spring up, hat askew, turnip crown listing, and give them the fool's weapon of last resort. You present your rear end, as muddy as an idea dragged across a bad meeting, and shake it once, solemnly, at the lord with the brick jaw. It's not a joke. It's surrender disguised as bravado. It works. Even the queen laughs, a real laugh, the kind that scrapes silver settings of their seriousness. You are forgiven for not drowning yourself in pig broth. For this minute, you are allowed to exist. After, it's over, without anyone telling you. The musicians begin a thin tune that people call dancing because their clothes move. Platters sweep past again with rich smells that make your eyes water. The feather hat boy traces a turnip on the table with his finger like drawing your portrait. You return to your strip of wall, mud drying into a new skin, and let your breath happen. You thought the worst part would be failing. It isn't. It's succeeding at the thing where you become the joke. You peel the turnip from your cap and set it carefully on the floor beside your shoe, like a small, patient friend who did its best. Somewhere behind the bustle, the mud on your back cools and stiffens. The bells go quiet, and your body learns a truth no one wrote down for you. They'll laugh. You just won't be in on why. They bring it out like a joke that forgot the punchline. The motley hangs from a peg near the hearth, limp as a drowned flag, diamond patches stitched at angles that make your eyes argue with each other. Up close, you can see the seams aren't seams so much as a series of apologies, red beside green beside a color that might once have been yellow before smoke and despair had their way with it. You reach for the fabric and your fingers come back with a film of dust and something that smells like old sweat and last winter's onions. The tailor, if he deserves the title, tuts at you for breathing near his work. Delicate, he says, which is objectively false. The tunic is rough. Not rough as in rustic. Rough as in held together by the concept of cloth more than the reality of it. It scrapes your shoulders when you pull it over your head and discovers places to itch you didn't know you owned. The inner lining is a rumor. Your skin, newly promoted to the position of padding, files a complaint. The sleeves commit to being the wrong length on both arms in different, original ways. And when you shift, the stitches chirp. You are dressed in noise. Then the hose, which take a personal interest in your dignity. They're two different colors. The intent is merry. The effect is bruise. And one has been darned with thread so thick it feels like you're wearing a secret fence. The tailor tells you to pull them higher, and then clicks his tongue when there's nowhere left to pull. A boy snickers from behind a bolt of fabric and mimics your stance. Knees turned out, feet already sore. You can feel every splinter in the floor through your soles like a map drawn by a spiteful cartographer. The shoes are not shoes. They are statements. The leather is stiff, curved upward at the toes into points that could double as philosophy. Absurd for the sake of being seen. Someone attached bells to the ends because cruelty has styles. You slide your feet in, and they cling to your heels like a bad idea that found proof of concept. When you stand, the tips bob with independent life, testing the air for weaknesses, ready to hook under the lip of a step, a stool, a moment. The tailor watches you take your first step and smiles the way a man smiles at a bridge he swears will hold. Last, the cap. It looks small until it's on you, and then it becomes a planet. 3 soft horns flop outward like the points of a compass, each tipped with a bell the size of a plum stone. The band pinches above your eyebrows, teaching you about new kinds of headache. The weight is deceptive. It's not heavy, it's insistent, reminding you with each tiny clink that your head is now public property. You tilt, and the bells comment. You breathe, and the bells register the minutes of your embarrassment. You think about removing it, and a page appears in the doorway, as if birthed by the very thought, just to say, don't. You hope for a mirror. There isn't one. There's a polished pan with a dent in the center where your face distorts into someone who deserves this, and in that someone's eyes you see the exact moment you stop pretending the outfit is costume. It isn't a disguise you can hide behind. It is an announcement you have to wear. The tailor lifts a hand and tugs a seam near your shoulder blade, tightens a cord at your waist to make sure your breath stays interesting. He pats a pouch sewn at your hip for tricks, which currently holds lint, and the conclusion that there will be no cape to swirl, no mask to lower, just diamonds and bells and you. When you step into the corridor, the air decides to feel colder. A maid carrying a basket glances up and hiccups a laugh she didn't give permission to. A guard clears his throat in the exact rhythm of your bells. 2 boys at the end of the passage fall into step behind you, hands cupped around their mouths as they announce your approach, like town criers. Jingle, jingle, until a matron swats them with a broom, and you both pretend that didn't make it worse. Stone kisses your soles through the thin leather, and the points of your shoes catch on every raised edge as if the floor is collecting your missteps for later. In the great hall, light turns your diamonds into a signal flag for anyone bored enough to look up from their plate. You're visible the way a torch is visible in a cave, not by choice. The cap bends with your nod, and the bells spill their opinion into the room. Heads swivel. The Queen's maid smiles the smile people wear at markets when someone drops a basket of apples, 80% sympathy, 20% pleasure at the spectacle. A servant walks too close with a platter, and one of your shoe tips taps the tray like a toast. The platter tilts. Their eyes go wide. Nothing falls. You celebrate internally, as if you just negotiated peace between nations. It doesn't stop at sight. It's touch. Threads bite your elbows when you bend. The waist tie binds across your middle, like a promise you didn't make. Each step rubs the hose seam against a strip of skin that becomes a raw line in the space of a conversation. You can't disappear. You can't blend into the wall to let the moment pass. The bells give you away. Your own body gives you away, rustling and creaking and sighing under the cartoon of yourself the clothes built. You catch a glimpse of a courtier wearing velvet so deep it looks like night, sleeves long enough to hide 100 sins, and you feel how your garments push you the other way. Forward, into the light, into the chuckles, the tests, the small tosses of fruit. A noble waves you close with 2 fingers and flicks one of the bells on your cap with idle curiosity. The sound is bright, a child's toy trapped in a room for adults. Clever, he says, to the cap, not to you. We shall always hear your thoughts arriving. You smile because your face has quick reflexes, and because your options are limited to smiling or being replaced. He tugs the horn left, then right, testing how ridiculous your head can look and what that does for his appetite. Behind him, a tapestry saint witnesses the scene with stitched indifference. You tell yourself the outfit will become your armor, because your brain tries kindness as a strategy when nothing else is available. Armor is supposed to turn blows. You take a few, light at first. Words like jesterling, moppet, rag rooster, and you feel the cloth do exactly nothing. It doesn't blunt insult, it amplifies it. The pattern says, permission granted. The bells say, aim here. A child darts from beneath a table and tugs at one shoe tip, then runs, delighted, when you almost fall into an admiration of the floor. A lady lifts your sleeve between two fingers and says, without looking at your face, coarse, like she's describing weather. It's colder inside the diamonds than it is outside them. Later, when the hall empties and the hearth becomes more ember than fire, you try to take the cap off slowly, like removing a bandage from a bad place. Your hair, crushed and damp, sighs in gratitude. The silence that lands in the space where the bells were is sudden enough to make your heart feel loud. You realize then what the tailor dressed wasn't just your body. He dressed your outline, your echo. The clothes linger in the air even folded, and the shapes they make on the bench could be a person if they had a pulse and a willingness to be laughed at. You wonder about the last fool who wore this. The threadbare elbows say there was one. The stitched-on patch over the right knee says he fell there, more than once, enough to keep it from being pretty. The inside of the cap smells like someone who sweated for a living. You sit with the motley in your lap and feel how much of him is left in it, how clothes remember the gravity of the work they were made for. You slide your fingers under a torn seam and think about pulling. You don't. Not because you're sentimental, because you know there's another set just like this waiting, and because you've learned something. The costume is not a shield. It's a signpost. It tells the room how to treat you before you make a sound. It tells you how to stand, how to move, how to turn yourself into a sound they prefer. It's a uniform for someone at war with dignity, but required to be charming while losing. You fold it as if folding a small, smiling enemy. Set the cap on top, bells facing the fire so they can warm, and lie down on your scratchy share of straw. In the dark, your scalp still hears the bells, and you finally admit the truth that the cloth held all day, tight as the stitches at your wrists. They don't dress you to protect you. They dress you so they never miss when they throw. They don't teach you the rules. You learn them face first. It starts as a throwaway remark from a lord with rings that could anchor boats. Fool, you've the look of a man who lost a wrestling match with a clothesline. He smiles like he's feeding you a scrap. The table goes quiet, the way a pond goes still, before someone throws in a bigger rock. This is the invitation. You're supposed to do something with it. Twist, flip, display the belly of the joke without slicing a noble finger. You open your mouth, and the bells on your cap volunteer to speak first. The room waits, amused, merciless. You aim for light, for clever. My lord, the line won and took my dignity for a flag. It's safe, soft. The laughter is teaspoon small. You've offered a broth when they wanted bone. The lord's eyes sharpen, the way a cat focuses right before it decides the curtain is prey. Try again, he says, in that tone nobles use for hunting and marriages. This is what passes for mercy. Try again means there won't be a third try. Across the table, a woman in blue tilts her goblet and says to no one in particular, perhaps he's better after wine. It's not a suggestion, it's a snare. If you reach for a cup and sip like a man, you're called greedy. If you refuse, you're rude. You nod at the goblet and say, my lady, I fear if I drink your wine, I'll start speaking sense and lose my office. The laugh comes warmer, but brief. You see it in their faces as clearly as candlelight on a blade. This isn't a stage. It's a field, and you are the rabbit. They test you with names first. Not your name, the one you haven't heard in days, but the names they toss like bones. Jingles, motley, half-wit. The kinder ones call you little scholar of nonsense. You learn to grade cruelty like cheese. Sharp is better than hard. You volley when you can. A baron pats his belly and says, "Out of the way, fool, or I'll trip and flatten you to a page." You bow low and answer, "Then I shall be the first thing you've ever read." Even the queen's mouth twitches. You live another minute. But wit here is coin they demand on command, and you never know the tax. The king likes you nimble, but not clever enough to draw blood. His brother wants blood and calls it sport. The priests enjoy piety turned on its ear, but will flay you for touching the wrong saint. The foreign envoy doesn't laugh at all, just watches to see what sort of leash the king keeps you on. They all want something different, and they all want it now. Your mind starts running in tight circles, sniffing for lanes where the joke can land without stepping on the crown. You discover there's a schedule you weren't told about. Dawn is harmless. Morning queries are usually about weather and cows. They like cow jokes because cows don't have cousins at court. Midday is vulgar and dangerous. Someone always wants you to describe a bishop's bottom, and someone else always wants to be offended by how poetically you do it. Evenings are knives wrapped in velvet. That's when alliances are tested with laughter, when a lord will suggest that another lord's daughter looks like she was carved from a turnip, and then look at you to see whether you can make that true without anyone confessing to cruelty. You fail once, properly. The memory tastes like iron. A thin man with an expensive cough says, "Fool, we hear the steward's new bride is fair." The air tightens. The steward is small but important. His cheeks are apples. His bride is at the far end of the table, trying to make herself into a napkin. You go for a gentle deflection, a pun about fairness, salt, grain. It dies before it gets halfway across the wood. The thin man repeats himself, slower, feeding you the blade. This time you try a different road and say, "Fair? Aye, she's fair the way dawn is fair," which is to say the morning star gets jealous. You meant it as kindness. The thin man's mouth arranges itself into pity. "Poets answer," he says, which is the word they use when you've refused to draw blood. The room decides that's a failure. After the meal, you are invited to feel the consequences, not in public. Public punishments are for thieves and unpopular ideas. This is a private education. The steward finds you near the buttery and suggests, with a hand on your shoulder and all his teeth, that you stick to pigs and saints. His hand is light. The threat sits behind his teeth like a second tongue. "We like our laughter," he says, "but we like our peace more." You nod and promise silently to betray more carefully. Once you've failed loudly, the court can smell it. They ramp up. A lady asks if you've ever seen a mermaid. Before you can answer, a knight roars, "He saw one last night and still smells of fish." The table explodes. You are supposed to return the serve. Fish for fish. Insult for insult. You give them, "Nay, sir, you're thinking of yourself. Every time you sweat, the river comes home." It's meaner than you are. It works. The knight laughs with his mouth while his eyes mark you like a tree he'll come back to with an axe. You feel the ledger writing itself in the room. Sometimes the bait hides inside kindness. The queen's sister, wrapped in white that makes the whole hall look dirty, says, "Fool, would you have me a jest that doesn't hurt anyone?" The table coos. It's a trap, with lace on it. You try to talk about the sun, forgetting its path and accidentally sleeping in. It's soft, sweet, nothing. It gets nothing. Then the sister smiles like she expected that and says, "Perhaps you aren't cruel enough for this work." That sticks. All day, servants and small lords repeat it. Not cruel enough, like you mispronounced a prayer. Other tests come fast and petty. A lord drops his ring and waits to see if you scramble. A lady feigns a swoon and depends on you to make it a joke so no one asks why she actually needed to sit down. Pages hide your bells and then gasp when your head is quiet. You respond, automatically, constantly, shaping nonsense into shields. Your tongue becomes a knife you're not strong enough to lift for long. When it lands, they cheer. When it slips, They clap anyway and call it grace. When it cuts the wrong thing, the room goes still, and you remember silence has weight. You start preparing patter for each face. The baron with the nose that could point ships gets a ship joke. The priest who drinks too much gets a wine parable that ends in forgiveness. The queen's lapdog gets more lines than the queen because the lapdog can't be offended, and the queen laughs when you anthropomorphize her pet's opinions on tax. You keep a prayer in your mind at all times. Let my mouth be faster than my fear. Let my bell ring on the right syllable. Let the turnip hit my back and not my head. There's a moment, late, when you notice the court watching you not as a person but as a tool testing itself. The king holds a council over small wars and large egos. You stand by the pillar, and the red man, he of the tidy smile, leans close and whispers, "Ease the room." That's the order. Ease the room. You toss in a barb about the mapmaker who draws borders with shaking hands, and the council exhales. You ask a question as if you don't understand the difference between a levy, and a count chuckles and decides not to shout. You pull heat off the table and into your cap with a handful of words and a tiny bow, and you realize the trick isn't jokes. It's pressure. You're a valve with bells. By midnight, you're emptied out. Wit used like this is a muscle in a wound. Your cheeks ache from making shapes that look like confidence. Your throat burns from swallowing the lines you can't say. Your brain counts losses. One steward offended, one knight entertained but not fooled, one queen amused, one king unreadable. The servants are kinder than anyone with rings. They slide you a crust, share a whisper, teach you which nobles like to be elbowed and which demand to be adored. They know the real test is not whether you can make them laugh, but whether you can keep yourself intact while they feed on it. When you finally reach the dark corridor, the bells quiet, and the stone stops asking you to dance, you lean against the wall and breathe until your lungs decide to stop acting like startled birds. You think of all the answers you didn't say, the ones that would have lit the room and burned your life to ash. You hold them in your mouth like candies you aren't allowed. The work here, you learn, isn't only to be quick. It's to be quick and small, sharp and soft, to strike without leaving a mark that bleeds. It would be easier to be stupid or cruel, easier to bite and enjoy the taste. You aren't allowed either. So you learn the edge where everyone's teeth meet, and you balance there, bells careful, voice calm, a smile like a bridge over a river full of stones. And every time they say, "Fool, speak," you cough up another coin and hope you don't run out. They start calling you his little fool, like it's a pet name and a leash at the same time. The king doesn't raise his voice when he says it. He doesn't need to. The room folds around his words like cloth around a fist. He pats the air near your head instead of your head itself, a gesture that says you belong to him without risking oil on his fingers. When he is pleased, the phrase lands like a crumb, little. When he is not, the word tightens, and you feel the collar even if you can't touch it. Ownership echoes. The nobles hear it and immediately translate little into ours. They don't ask for you. They take you off the hook by the fire and carry you through the hall like a joke on a platter. "Fool, over here," says a duchess who wears ravens as jewelry. You bow because bowing prevents questions. She wants a quip about her husband's gout that won't make him challenge anyone. You provide 3 options, fast and bloodless. She picks the one with the least words and smirks like she paid for it. A moment later, you are handed to a cluster of knights who want to see you juggle knives, but with the safety of pairs, they laugh at the wrong parts and slap your back with hands that were just on their swords. You smile like the room can't pinch. You are furniture with opinions, a mascot with knees. The king roots you through conversations like a servant roots water with a bucket. "Go cool that table," he murmurs, and you do, pouring your voice where the fire is too high. "Warm that one," and you make a soft joke about a skirt that looks like it misses autumn. You're not told why. You're told because the words, "my little fool," travel farther than you do. You find them in corners you hadn't reached yet, spoken by people who do not look at you while they say them, as if they are identifying a tool by sound alone. When the king wants to be generous, he lifts your cup from the floor to the table's edge. It's a small movement, and the room watches it like weather. Your mouth touches wine that doesn't taste like regret, and that becomes a story you will live off for days. You learn the calculation. A laugh that arrives on time at the right height might earn you a bite of roasted meat before it becomes cold permission. A misstep earns you a glance that cools your bones. The king never shouts. He shortens your leash to a single word. Enough. And the hall becomes a cliff. The nobles treat you like communal property with receipts. They test your sturdiness the way men test benches in market stalls. Sit, bounce, declare it adequate, and call their friends over to try. A countess named for a bird insists you mimic the steward's walk, then laughs into her handkerchief when the steward pretends not to notice. Take him, she tells the steward's wife, like it's your turn on a wheel. The steward's wife asks you to stand by her chair and remark on the weather in metaphors until her face stops looking like a door. You do it. You are handed to a priest who wants you to confess how often you blaspheme, and then absolves you with a chuckle that tastes of ale. You are borrowed by the queen's ladies for a game, which turns out to be watching you balance a plate on your nose while they decide which marriage is a punishment and which is simply work. Some cheer you like a well-thrown stick for a dog. Some jeer because it feels like prayer with less accountability. The same mouth can do both in the same breath. You learn to love the cheer because it means no one is arranging your body into a story you don't survive. You take the jeer like medicine that makes you walk straighter. In the shadows, servants measure you more honestly. One slips bread into your hand when she passes, not because she likes your jokes, but because you've been upright longer than she thinks fair. Another warns you with her eyes when a lord decides his sport today will be seeing if you can make a joke after being tripped. The king's favor wraps around you and turns into a target. When you stand near him, men aim through you. Fool, says a cousin with ambitions, tell the king a tale of loyalty, and then watches to see whether the word lands like hunger. You tell a story about a dog that stayed by a door through 3 winters, and the king hums a sound that could be approval or indigestion. The cousin grins anyway. Later, the captain of the guard says, "Fool, teach me a jest that turns aside a blade, which means flatter me without making me look soft. You manage it." He grunts, satisfied, as if you've sharpened something that no longer needs you. There are perks to belonging. You sit closer to heat than men with better boots. You learn early which platters arrive with privilege and which with consequence. Your work earns you scraps that taste like cooked decisions. You are spared the worst tasks and given the worst moments instead. When a petition fails, they look at you like you could have oiled the hinge. When a duke storms out, they ask why your bells didn't soften the stomp. When the queen laughs at a line you barely meant, the way the king watches you feels like standing too close to a son. The toys get passed around. At the dinner end, a baron decides your cap is a drinking challenge, unmakes the bell, and turns it into a cup. The nobles howl as he pours ale into your hat and pretends to be you. You have a choice, rage or improvise. You tip your head to the other side and bow as though you planned to be lopsided all along. The baron drinks, pulls a face, declares you seasoned, and gives the cap back wet and smiling. Your scalp will itch for 2 days, but you survive with your outline intact. The room writes that down as proof you're good at your job. Sometimes the king's pet is useful in ways that keep you from drowning. He calls you closer during an argument about tax and asks, "What does the fool think?" It's theater. It's also a trap with cushions. You say, "The fool thinks mice don't argue about cheese until the cat leaves," and the room performs being delighted. The king hears what he wants inside your nonsense and uses it as a lever. Later he tosses you that soft little like a bone. You hate how fast you catch it. And then you're nobody again, because a noble flicks his fingers and wants to see if you can make a fish face to cheer a bored child. The child shrieks, then hurls a seed cake at your chest because he can. His mother says, "Oh, how precious." And his father says, "Again." And you do it again because resistance is a bad audience. The queen asks you to sing, not because she wants music, but because the hall needs a moment where her beauty is undisturbed by men speaking politics. Your voice is serviceable. Your throat is tired. They clap, some sincerely, most to tell the king they noticed he asked you. On the stair after, a drunk lord calls you by the wrong name on purpose and blocks your path with one finger. "Do something," he says, which is the most honest command you hear all week. You look at the finger, the ring, the man, the distance to the wall, the guard pretending not to notice, the servant with a tray who can't move until you do. You take the finger, kiss it formally as if it belongs to a bishop, and declare it knighted for services to the realm of pointing. The lord laughs and moves aside. The servant exhales. You make a note for later. Always kiss the weapon when it's small. You sleep badly because belonging is louder than hunger. When you close your eyes, you rehearse versions of yourself. The king's dog who doesn't bark at thunder, the noble's toy that never breaks where it shows, the bridge that people cross to speak to one another without saying what they mean. In the middle of the night, you wake because your scalp remembers the wet cap, and your ear remembers the word little. You lie there and let the quiet tell you its terrible truth. You are safe only while you are useful. And his little fool is the kind of safety that teaches the whole room how to hold you by the neck. You learn the weather of the king before you learn the weather of the sky. It's in the way he puts his cup down, soft when taxes go well, louder when letters arrive with too many seals and not enough yes. Today the cup lands like a verdict. The hall keeps speaking, but more carefully, like walkers on ice. The red man's smile goes flatter at the edges. Even the dog by the hearth sighs and slides under a bench as if thunder were practicing. You make yourself smaller by moving slower. Bells don't understand small. They volunteer your position with each step, as though you're a lost child in a market. A lord waves you closer with the back of his hand, as if swatting a fly that tells jokes. "Fool," he says, eyes on the king. "Tell us a merry thing." Merry is the word they use when they mean harmless, which is usually impossible. You choose something about rain forgetting the fields. It's gentle, it's nothing, but nothing is safer than sharp. The line falls, and for a second you think you've threaded the needle. Then the king looks up and decides you haven't. "Play," he says. One syllable, light as ash. The room changes shape. A page disappears and reappears with a stick wrapped in ribbon, as if dressing a blade makes it a spoon. Two knights grin the way boys grin before they push another boy into the river. A space opens near the dais, a circle like a mouth. You step into it because the circle is patient, and the alternative is disobedience. People arrange their faces into amusement, like masks taken from a shelf. It's always called a game. You are to be chased, tapped, tripped. The taps land like explanations. "For the wrong word," the first knight says, and the ribbon stick kisses your shoulder through motley. Bells jingle like witnesses. "For the insult you didn't make," says the second, and your calf stings. Laughter trickles, careful, eager to be the correct size. The king watches with the attention of a man tallying grain. You try to lead it, to turn it, to make the thing about speed and slipping rather than the arithmetic of hurt. You lurch theatrically, catch your toe, roll your eyes, wail as if your pride is the only thing bruised. The court loves a man performing his own downfall. You loop past the high table and under the aisle where the servants stand with their spines at attention. One girl, flower on her knuckles, hair pinned like a promise, tilts the ribbon stick with a fingertip as it comes down, steals some of its bite. It still bites. You look up at her and she looks anywhere else. They escalate on laughter like it's a ladder. For speaking over us, someone calls, and a lord flicks the bells on your cap hard enough to make your ears ring. For silence, adds a lady, voice sweetened, and you get a swipe across the back that lands like a red exclamation only you will see later when you undress and count. You understand then why the ribbon is there. It keeps the marks plausible for a party. The red man drifts near, tidy smile restored, and clucks his tongue like a tutor coaching a dull child. "Quicker, little one," he murmurs, the king's words in his mouth. The game is laughter. So you give them speed. You run the circle, knock your hip on a bench, yelp in a way that pleases people who never yelp, and grab a pewter plate to use as a shield. The plate sings when the stick hits it. You pretend to be startled by your own cleverness, and the hall rewards you with cheers that are also permission to keep breathing. The king's mood does not change. He watches like a man deciding how to price wheat. The more the room enjoys itself, the more you understand what the shadow of the whipping boy feels like. That boy is for the prince, punished on behalf of a body with a crown waiting for it. You are for the king himself, punished on behalf of weather, war, bad meat, a letter that said no too politely. When nobody bears the king's lash, his pet will do. You try a line, small and bright, tossed like a coin into a well. "Majesty," you pant, fainting left as a stick whistles by. "If pain were tax, you'd find me paid up." It gets you a bristle of laughter, but the wrong kind. The court likes that you can say it, not that you did. The king's jaw notches. The next swat drifts lower. You change tactics. You offer penance. You go down on one knee with theatrical devotion, palm to heart, head bowed so the bells rest against your cheek like cold fruit. "Mercy," you say, and give them a rhyme about sparrows and crumbs. Mercy is not the point today. The point is that everyone sees the king's ire has a place to land. The stick kisses your shoulder again, then your other shoulder, almost symmetrical, like someone customizing you to match the room. The crowd finds the beat and claps along. They cheer the way people cheer for sport, because it's safe to join noise that already exists. You watch the queen out of the corner of your eye. Her face is composed, but her fingers twist the edge of her sleeve, and when the stick swishes a hair close to your ear, her mouth flattens. It is not nothing. It is also not rescue. There are rules you learn inside the game. Don't flinch before the blow. Fear is the only unforgivable comedy. Don't dodge a noble you will need later. Do dodge the cousin who smells like vinegar. He swings wide for the joy of it. Keep your eyes soft. Bleed later. When their arms start to tire and the laughter drops from the ceiling to the floor, you find your opportunity. Someone overreaches. You skip aside. The ribboned stick claps a fat lord's thigh. The fat lord yelps. The room explodes. Relief is laughter's truest ingredient. You take a bow so deep, your back complains, and the king lifts 2 fingers. Enough. The weather breaks. They call it play, as they hand you back to yourself. A page fetches a cup. The wine is thin and thinks poorly of you. The red man straightens your cap with hands that never work, only direct. "Well done," he says, which means you did not make the king angrier. A knight claps your shoulder exactly where the stick bit you and tells you you're a good sport, which means you didn't cry in front of anyone who mattered. A maid passes and lets the corner of her apron brush your wrist. A small unhurting to prove the world still has some. After the hall shifts back to eating and plotting, you retreat to the crack of cool wall you've begun calling yours. You breathe through cloth, through the bell's metal taste, through the thin animal in your ribs banging to be let out. Your skin hums where the ribbon remembered you. You think about the other version of this, the one for princes, the boy hit to save a future king's perfection. You envy him the certainty. His pain means something particular, wrong as it is. Yours means whatever anyone needs it to. In the buttery later, the steward pretends to forget you were the evening's drum. He speaks about casks and spoons. He does not meet your eye. When you reach for the ladle, your sleeve shifts, and you feel the air touch a welt like it's reading. You pull the cloth back down, because privacy is now a spell you cast on yourself. The cook slides you a gnarl of bread torn from the good loaf, not the one they set out for eyes. "Sop," she says, not looking up. You do. It helps. It doesn't. You learn to read the day differently after that. Watch the tilt of the crown at breakfast, the length of the king's prayers, the way the messenger holds his mouth after delivering news. You learn who swings hard and laughs soft, and who swings soft and laughs hard. You learn where to stand so your back finds stone when it matters. You keep a joke for the last moment and use it like a candle when everyone wants a torch. At night, the bells lie beside you, like quiet coins. Your skin lists its grievances, pulsing in time with your heart. You count the marks with your fingers, then stop counting because numbers pretend to be control, and this isn't. You breathe until sleep is something your body believes in again. In the dark, you practice the only line that matters on days like this, the one you will never say out loud, the one that keeps your spine from folding. Tomorrow, you will make them laugh before they remember they want to hurt you. You don't hear the order so much as feel it hit the room. The king lifts 2 fingers like he's directing sunlight, and a dozen hands start moving without knowing why. Platters tilt. Knives pause. A cup stops halfway to a mouth. The red man appears at your shoulder with a smile that has never once apologized and says, "Taste." It is not a request. It is not even a word. It's a door closing. Someone sets a small wooden trencher in your hands as if you can catch death with it. The first plate is a peacock pretending to still be alive. Its skin lacquered, its tail reassembled like a lie, its eyes glass marbles that do not forgive. The steam that rises smells of cloves and triumph. You break the smallest piece your fingers can find, blow, put it on your tongue, and invite fate to sit. The hall leans in. Poison is a shy god here. It shows itself only after being adored. You chew slowly and count heartbeats, not because it helps, but because counting is the only way to trick fear into walking instead of running. Salt, sweet, smoke, nothing sharp. You swallow. You bow. The room breathes. The king does not look at you. He looks at the meat, as though your mouth were an expensive spoon he sent ahead to test the broth. The platter moves past, and you are pressed toward the next. A white fish lies under a blanket of sauce the color of forgiveness. The cook watches from the doors in the way a condemned man watches weather. You lift a flake, pale as grief, touch it with your lips so lightly it feels like lying, then commit. The sauce is wine and butter, and something that makes your tongue ring like a tiny bell. For a heartbeat, you think of home. Then remember, home won't save you here. You swallow. Nothing pricks, nothing burns. You live. They call it honor. You call it an alphabet of possible endings. Venison, still red in the middle like it forgot to be secret. You chew and picture berries crushed underfoot, not a vial tipped into gravy. Sausages, glistening with the optimism of animal fat. You bite, and try not to imagine a thin powder stirred in with a bad thought. The trick is to keep your face dull and your bells quiet. If you flinch, the queen's maid gasps, and everyone has to pretend it's dramatic. If you grin, you turn a table into a temple. You learn quickly that the only acceptable expression is a pleasant boredom that says the world will continue. Sometimes the food is honest. A plate of onions blackened enough to confess. A heel of bread so hard you could write your fate on it. Those are easy. Your mouth knows what to do with plain. It's the sauces that make you sweat. Thick things, brown and innocent, poured to the edge of the meat like a moat around a castle that has already fallen. You take a sip from a spoon, and the red man bends to murmur, "Wait." You pause midair while he watches the king's face for a joke only he can hear. He nods, and you lift the spoon to your lips and pretend not to notice your hands shaking. there are tiny rituals that become superstitions because you need them. You always taste with the left side first, because the one time you didn't, you were sick that night, and you'd rather make a pattern of a coincidence than believe nothing is yours. You breathe twice before swallowing, as if inviting air will dilute whatever wants you dead. You watch the king in the corner of your eye, because sometimes he is kinder when he is thinking of war and cruelties get mislaid under maps. The nobles make entertainment of the waiting. What face would he make if he were dying? A lady asks behind her fan, and the lord beside her says, the same as when he's thinking, and they laugh into napkins as if they're sparing you. A boy too young to inherit anything but trouble asks, does poison tickle? And you smile at him and say, only if it likes you. And he looks pleased to be liked even by hypothetical murder. The queen watches you like she's practicing a prayer in a language she doesn't want anyone to catch her learning. Between courses, you escape to the sideboard for the theater of rinsing a cup. The kitchen girl from yesterday is there, arms white with flour up to the elbows, hair fighting its pins. She slides a slice of pear toward you without looking, the kind of kindness that doesn't want to be seen in case it counts as a crime. You bite it, and for a clean second your mouth is only a mouth again. The bells jingle when you exhale, tattling on your gratitude. The meat pie is the worst. The lid cracks like a crust over secrets, and smack inside is a stew of meat that could be boar, could be rabbit, could be a cook's confession. The smell is generous, wrong, familiar, wrong. You cut the smallest corner and find a tooth that isn't cookware. You pretend not to. You chew, swallow, and wait for your throat to decide how attached it is to breathing. The king says nothing. The red man says, bold, as if you chose the tooth to accessorize your courage. Then there are the drinks, not wine. Wine is a coward's poison here and too easy to smell. Syrups, cordials, a clear spirit that sits in a thin glass like a dare. You wet your tongue, and it burns a holy path to your chest. Your heart taps on your ribs like it's wanting to be let out for a walk. A monk at the end of the table nods solemnly like he knows this one. You don't make a sound. They say the last jester died of laughter, which is useful because it lets everyone pretend. In the buttery, the steward says it as a joke, and everyone claps. In the scullery, a spit boy whispers it and looks at your hands. The truth is duller and closer. Someone once mixed bitter almond into cream, and a fool stopped being useful and became a story. You hear versions with different names in the same end, and each one teaches your stomach a new way to knot. You do this by day, and you perform by night, which is to say you roll dice all afternoon and then juggle for the men who loaded them. There's a moment when your tongue goes numb, and you aren't sure if it's the clove-heavy sauce or your fear biting back. You continue as if you chose it. The nobles applaud the courage they arranged for you. The king nods as though you successfully carried a bucket without spilling a war into it, and the servants keep your cup moving toward and away from your mouth like tide. Once, the red man takes pity or seeks credit and whispers, "Not the pears," as the bowl sweeps past. You nod as if you already knew because pride would rather be ill than be seen learning. Later, you watch a lord with opinions about roads stick his fingers into that same bowl and eat half of it with the appetite of a man who believes nothing applies to him. He lives. Of course he lives. The gods are lazy accountants. You think about saying no. Not aloud, but aloud would be suicide, and you haven't had that much to drink. You imagine saying it in your bones, in your knee as you step forward, in your throat as you swallow, and you find the place where what you want and what you must do share a seat. It is small and uncomfortable, and entirely yours. You sit in it anyway. After the feast, while the hall cools and the dog emerges to collect what dignity gravity left on the floor, you count. Not bites, moments when your body reminded you how to exist. A pear slice that tasted like summer and not threat. The look the queen gave you when the sauce trembled on your spoon and she didn't breathe for you. The kitchen girl's shoulder bumping yours on purpose, so you know there is another human inside this noise. Your stomach gurgles a late opinion as you lie on straw that knows more about loyalty than most men in velvet. You wait. Waiting is your second profession. Somewhere in the dark, a rat skitters past with a crumb, and you wish it well. Your tongue feels normal again. Your fingers unfist. Your heart stops knocking on the bars. You live, and in the morning you will put your mouth between a king and his food again, like that's a reasonable way to keep your job. They call it justice, but the only thing on trial is your timing. You're summoned after supper, when the hall is heavy with grease and wine, and whatever passes for mercy in velvet. The fire crackles with theatrical intent, and someone strung up a length of tapestry like a curtain, though it mostly sags like a tired lung. A page announces your name, not your real one, not even your Jester's moniker, just the accused. That earns a chuckle. You're marched forward beneath torchlight, bells jingling like accomplices. The red man smiles with his teeth this time. That's never a good sign. He paces in front of you with the air of a man inventing law as he goes. The fool, he declares, stands accused of grievous crimes. 1 count of botched limerick, 2 counts of puns that refuse to die, and a heinous series of rhymes involving the Duchess and a turnip. The crowd laughs like it's a game, which it is, for them. A boy with too many feathers in his cap bangs a ladle against a pewter bowl and proclaims, "All rise for the Honorable Lord Justicar of Merriment," which turns out to be a corpulent baron who's already halfway into his 3rd flagon and has mistaken a drumstick for a gavel. Let the trial begin, someone yells, and you're shoved onto a stool with legs that wobble in time with your courage. State your defense, the red man says, eyes twinkling. You offer a grin, because that's all you've got. Your worships, if jokes were bread, I'd only serve them stale to be sure they rise again. Silence, a cough, then a flat thud as someone lobs an olive at your chest. Let the record show, the baron slurs, that the fool remains unapologetic. The red man turns to the crowd. Shall we test his remorse? They howl for it. So begins the parade of jokes. Each one a stone you must lift with trembling hands and hope the crowd doesn't notice your knees. You open with a safe one. Something about monks and mice. Nothing clever, just rhythm and familiarity. The response is tepid, like soup that's mostly memory. You move to something riskier. The knight who limps because he once challenged a goose. You mime the battle with exaggerated flaps, eyes wide, feathers flying. You brought props. You always bring props. A few titters escape the pages, but the nobles hold their laughter like gold in a drought. The knight himself scowls, which you expected. He laughs later, after wine, but never at the right time. Another jest, this one older than your boots. You bend over backward, literally, punctuate it with a fart noise, and hope the low road is paved in chuckles. A tomato bounces off your shoulder with a wet indignity. The red man lifts his brows. Your sentence, then, you wait, because there is always a twist. The fool, he declares, shall redeem his comedy through further jest. Only then shall he be declared not entirely useless. You bow as if you chose this. The trial continues. It always does. They give you themes now. Love, someone shouts. You improvise a bawdy tale about a baker and a fishmonger's daughter and a loaf that wouldn't rise. There's a ripple of laughter, but it dies before reaching the dais. War, cries another. You tell of a siege defeated by a wheel of cheese and a goat with a grudge. A knight snorts, then claps his hand over his mouth like laughter might betray him. Your Majesty, the red man intones, shall we proceed to cross-examination? The king nods, bored, swirling his wine like it holds prophecy. The nobles begin their questions, not real ones. Barbs with question marks attached. Is it true you mistake flattery for wit? Do your jokes always smell of desperation? What makes you think you're funny? You deflect. That's the only defense left. You juggle words like apples, hoping none fall. Only those with bruised egos smell desperation in ripe fruit. You quip. Someone snorts. The red man frowns. "Why don't you ever jest about the king?" a voice asks. You freeze. Because the king doesn't find laughter flattering. Because last week, a juggler dared a pun, and now he juggles for worms. Because even your courage has teeth marks where prudence bit it in half. You smile. Because some men are jokes only fate may tell. That gets a few sharp breaths, one whistle, and an audible gulp from the queen's page. The king chuckles. Just once. The trial ends not with a verdict, but with a dismissal. The baron announces, "Let the fool walk free. He's already serving life." That gets the biggest laugh of the night, though none of it is yours. You bow again, low enough to smell the rushes, and stumble back to the servant's alcove where wine skins and crumbs await. Your breath shakes. Your hands are stiff from clenching the performance into submission. The kitchen girl passes you a crust without looking. You take it like a coin offered in pity. Later, lying in the straw, you count the jokes that might have killed you. You count the ones that simply wounded. You try to remember the first time you told one and felt the room catch it like a gift instead of a grenade. You wonder what it would be like to speak and not measure every vowel against survival. Tomorrow, the court will call again, and you will answer, because the fool's sentence is never spoken. It is worn, like bells, like shame, and like any punishment dressed in laughter, it keeps them from hearing you bleed. The laughter always fades faster than the warmth. That's the first thing you learn. One moment you're the flickering flame in the center of the feast, the next you're a shadow sweeping crumbs from under the dais. The nobles leave behind the detritus of revelry, bones sucked clean, goblets tipped over like conquered kingdoms, and the scent of oversalted meats mixed with too much perfume and too little guilt. You wait until the hall echoes, not with cheer, but with chair legs dragging and servants coughing. Then you rise from your corner near the kitchen door and gather your things. The props go first. Bells untied, the wooden codpiece unbuckled with care, the fake beard pulled off in one clean motion that leaves a ghost of glue behind your ears. You coil the jester's whip and tuck it into the satchel like it might come alive if left out too long. The juggling pins, one with a dent from the time you missed and cracked your own shin, are bundled like wounded soldiers. Your job is not done when the king has laughed. Your job is done when the hall is empty, the floor is clean, and no one remembers you were ever there. The broom is heavier than your staff, though it carries none of the ceremony. You push it along the flagstones with practiced rhythm, following the trail of dried fruit, broken nutshells, and dropped wisdom. A grape squishes beneath your boot. Somewhere near the high table, there's a smear of something pink, pomegranate or pig's blood. Impossible to tell in this light. You crouch and scrub it with a damp rag, hands raw from the lye soap and worse from the cold. Spit is always hardest to clean. It clings to stone like a stain of contempt. It's never yours, at least not tonight, but it always feels personal. Sometimes you hear the laughter again as you wipe it away. Sometimes it echoes even louder when it's gone. You sweep, you scrub, you gather. Bits of broken lute string, a cracked mask, a scroll someone used to mop up spilled wine. The smell of sweat baked into rushes, the perfume of roast swan fat turning sour in the corners. You breathe through your mouth and think of nothing in particular. Thinking is a luxury reserved for daytime fools. In the alcove behind the hearth, you roll the painted backdrop used for tonight's pantomime, an idyllic countryside with trees shaped like question marks. It took you hours to paint and seconds to be torn by a drunken lord tripping over a chicken. You fold it anyway, careful not to worsen the rip. You'll mend it with horsehair thread tomorrow, when the light returns and your fingers remember how to obey. The dogs come in once the feast is over, searching for scraps and comfort. They circle you warily, sniffing at the hem of your motley. One of them, the three-legged hound with a scar across his snout, settles by the hearth and watches you work. You nod to him. He nods back. or maybe just blinks. But in either case, it's more kindness than you've earned from any man all night. You don't speak while you clean. It's not a vow, just a habit. No one listens after the music stops, and jokes told to empty rooms tend to rot. So you work in silence, unless a board creaks underfoot or a rat dashes from under the bench to remind you you're not alone. Sometimes you hum, but only if your hands are busy enough to drown it out. Your cell is down the servants' corridor, past the pantry where the scullions sleep and the slop buckets are stacked like cheap urns. But you don't go there yet. Not until your other duties are done. There's the costume to mend. The green and yellow motley, with one sleeve torn during your final pratfall. You thread the needle by candlelight, pricking your finger once and sucking the blood without comment. You've sewn through worse. You patch the hole, reinforce the knee, and consider whether the bells on the cap are too loud. You think about removing one. You think about sewing it to your boot instead, just to hear something jingle while you walk. You tuck your instruments into a drawer that sticks. The ivory flute, the small tambourine, the lute with only 4 strings that still manages to sing if you coax it just right. You clean them with an oiled cloth and wrap each one like a relic. Then there's your face. Not the one you show the crowd, but the one beneath. You wipe it clean in a basin of cold water, washing off the rouge and the charcoal eyebrows and the sweat. You stare into the water, but it never shows you anything worth keeping. The man looking back at you is tired, not theatrically so, just quiet. You slip out the side door for air. The night is cold enough to slap. Stars prick the sky in a mockery of applause, and the moon looks too bright for someone who spent the evening being mocked for money. You sit on the stone stoop with your arms around your knees and let the frost chew at your sleeves. From here, the castle seems still, even kind, just angles and shadows. No jeering, no forced rhymes, no invisible court of judgment, just stone being stone. The kitchen girl passes by on her way to the well. She sees you and pauses. No words. She just lifts her chin in that way that says, "I know," and keeps walking. That's the kind of kindness you get now. Quiet ones. When you finally rise, your joints complain, but not in protest. More like old friends reminding you they're still here. You walk back through the emptied hall, broom in hand, the scent of ash and spoiled wine trailing behind you like a cloak. The props are tucked away. The floor is clean. Your face is scrubbed of its mask. No one sees you now, which means, for the first time all night, you are real. It starts the way most catastrophes do. Too much wine, too little dignity, and a nobleman who believes laughter can be summoned like a dog. The hall is swollen with heat and noise, spit-roasted boar sweating under candlelight while goblets clink like iron bells. You're tucked into a corner, eating with one hand and holding your broken lute in the other, plucking it idly, like it might forgive you. It doesn't. Someone calls your name. Not your real one, of course, but the one they gave you, jingles, like a slap made of brass. You don't look up until you feel the tug at your collar. A squire with wine-blotched cheeks pulls you upright with the same urgency one might apply to milking a goat mid-stampede. Lord Falbridge says juggle. He slurs, pointing at the high table with theatrical panic. Now, or he'll find out if your teeth bounce. You are not, at this moment, in a position to negotiate. So you rise, bells rattling, motley soaked through at the armpits, and you're guided not to the usual patch of straw by the hearth but onto the table itself. Wood groans under your weight. Plates scatter like coins dropped by God. A goblet topples and drowns a meat pie. Somewhere below, someone claps as if this is the funniest thing they've seen since a priest vomited during Mass. Then, someone places the chickens in your arms. You stare at them. They stare back. Not dead, not plucked. Very much alive and extremely unimpressed by your resume. "Juggle!" shouts Lord Falbridge, who is chewing something red and dripping and looks like he might eat you next if the mood strikes. "Entertain us, little fool. Make the birds fly. They do not want to fly. They want vengeance. You lift one chicken in each hand and attempt a theatrical toss. The first flaps free and careens into a candelabra. The second claws your shoulder with a shriek that sounds like prophecy. The third, which had not even been part of your juggling trio but has decided to join out of spite, launches from the table and lands beak first in the Duchess of Ivanley's powdered wig. The room erupts. Some of the nobles are laughing. Some are screaming. A monk drops his plate and crosses himself. A kitchen boy tries to help and is pecked in the shin. Lord Falbridge howls with delight as you try to retrieve the first chicken, which has now perched triumphantly atop a pitcher of gravy, crowing like it just inherited the throne. You make a grab for it and slip. Your boot finds a smear of cranberry sauce, and your whole body goes horizontal for a glorious, doomed moment. You land flat on your back amid a chorus of glass shattering and poultry chaos. The chickens scatter. The nobles roar. A goose. Not yours, not anyone's, just a passing opportunist, hops onto the table and begins eating the remains of a pear tart like it paid admission. The king watches in silence, one eyebrow raised like a dagger being weighed. You see him through the blur of pain and poultry feathers, seated perfectly still while his courtiers shriek with laughter and overturn dishes. His goblet is untouched, his lips a line. You try to rise, but the table is slick with everything that once resembled a meal, and your motley now clings to you like second skin soaked in meat juice and indignity. You manage to get one knee under you when someone throws a drumstick, and it bounces off your temple. The crowd loves it. The harder you fall, the louder they cheer. Jester, someone howls. Tell a joke before the duck steals your job. You rise, because not rising is more dangerous. You reach for your words, like a drowning man might reach for a floating stool. What's the difference, you begin, between a court of nobles and a coop of chickens? The room quiets slightly. You smile. Only one of them ever lays anything of value. It's bold. Too bold. It soars for a moment before crashing like a rock into the silence. Then the laughter comes. Some of it nervous, some of it wild. All of it tinged with the sharpness of collective cruelty. Someone throws a bread roll. You dodge it with a bow. The chickens have vanished. One of them, you'll later learn, laid an egg in the queen's boot. You will not be thanked for this. The feast resumes, sort of. The table is too wrecked for proper ceremony now. Plates are picked at with fingers. Someone's child is crying. A piglet runs through the hall trailing streamers. The chaos doesn't end. It mutates. You're not dismissed. You're not thanked. You're simply forgotten. The moment they've bled every drop of mirth from your humiliation, they move on, as if you were never there. You climb off the table on legs that aren't entirely your own and retreat behind the drapes, where the dog is chewing on what might have once been your dignity. Later, when the mess is yours to clean, and the wine-stained tablecloths weigh as much as regrets, you will find a feather in your belt that doesn't belong to any of the palace birds. You will keep it, not because it's funny, but because it proves you survived. Your bed is not a bed. It is a flattened burlap sack stuffed with hay so old it's forgotten what softness is. You lie on it like a condemned man on a pyre, arms folded across your chest, the stink of mildew curling into your nostrils. The stone floor below seeps cold into your bones with the devotion of a long-lost lover. Every time you shift, something crunches. Sometimes straw, sometimes mouse, sometimes worse, the room. If you're generous enough to call 4 damp walls and a doorless frame a room, is just wide enough to stretch your limbs, but not turn in them. The ceiling drips in 3 different places. You've named the drips. Leftmost is Sir Harold. He's fast, predictable. Center drip is called Mercy. She's silent until you forget her, and then strikes your forehead at 3 a.m. The third is unnamed because it only drips when someone dies, or at least That's the pattern you've imagined to make the waiting more tolerable. The mice are the only regular company, and even they aren't fond of you. They come for your crusts and crumbs, not your charm. Sometimes you hear them whispering in their high-pitched language, sounding out the corners of your shame. One chewed through your spare bootlaces last week, then dragged the frayed end into its hole like a trophy. You saluted it. The air in the chamber tastes of dust and boiled turnips. No window, only a slit above the lintel where wind whistles like a ghost too tired to haunt. When the kitchens burn sweet herbs, the smoke drifts in and makes your eyes itch with longing. But mostly, it smells of stone. Wet, patient, eternal. Stone doesn't care how many times you fall against it. It's already decided you're temporary. You try to sleep. You have to. Dawn is coming, and with it, the expectation that you'll be someone else. You'll paint on cheer, stretch your lips into a smile wide enough to swallow insults whole, and giggle on cue, while a duke's hand slides too low or a child throws pebbles at your back. But tonight your eyelids won't close. Not fully. The laughter clings like cobwebs, and it's louder in silence than it was during the feast. They laughed when you slipped on the wine spill, legs flailing like a puppet dropped from a tower. They howled when the bannerman tripped over your outstretched leg. Accidental, though they didn't care. The king smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give a dog that bites but hasn't been put down yet. You made them laugh, but not in the way that means you've done your job well. You made them laugh the way a man laughs when he catches a rat with its tail in the trap. You roll onto your side. The straw shifts, and something pokes your ribs. You don't flinch. Pain is familiar here. Not loud, not screaming. It just hums, a background instrument in the symphony of your nights. You hum with it. Not a song, exactly, just a noise to fill the space where your thoughts try to root. A breeze slips in through the slit and dances over your toes. You curl them instinctively, though the chill is nothing new. What startles you isn't the cold, it's the echo. Laughter, thin, remote, but present. You sit up slowly. The mice scurry back into their nests. For a moment, you wonder if you've slipped into a dream, but no. You are wide awake, and the laughter persists. Not the rowdy cackles of a feast, but a quieter, meaner laugh. It slithers, not shouts. It says, "We remember." You pull the thin blanket tighter around your shoulders and press your back to the wall. It's slick with condensation, but solid. A poor comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. The rumors live here, too. They curl in the corners with the cobwebs and fester in the damp. They say the last fool vanished in the night, smothered with his own jester's hat. They say another lost his mind and performed for mice until his heart stopped. They say fools are cursed, that laughter keeps them from dying but only just. You've stopped asking whether the rumors are true. Some nights you speak aloud, just to hear a voice that isn't tainted by mirth. You say your real name. Once, twice, then louder, like an incantation. It sounds foreign now, dry, like a word that belongs in a different mouth. But you say it anyway, because if you forget it entirely, then you are only the fool. And the fool doesn't get to be a man. You lie back down and close your eyes. Laughter again. Not real, probably. Just the echo lodged behind your ears, a phantom of a night too full of jest. But you still clench your jaw, because your body doesn't care whether it's real. It flinches either way. Eventually, sleep comes. Not peacefully. It creeps in like a thief, and you let it steal your consciousness, because there's nothing left worth guarding. And even in sleep, you are not safe. You dream of bells, and they are laughing too. You don't see it coming. That's the worst part. No fanfare, no trumpet, just a flick of the noblewoman's hand as she gestures to the ceramic vessel by her bed. It doesn't slosh, but it doesn't need to. The stench travels ahead of you like a herald, announcing your approach. She doesn't speak, She just raises an eyebrow, and you know your job. You lift it with both hands, keeping your elbows tight to avoid brushing the folds of her gown. She's already turned away, eyes back on the mirror, dabbing a crimson smear on her cheeks as though nothing happened. You're not there to be acknowledged. You're there to remove the evidence of human mess before it offends the delicate senses of power. The chamber pot is heavier than you expect, and hotter. That's the first indignity. There are worse. The hallway outside is lined with tapestries depicting the glory of kings, their swords raised against foes, their jaws square, righteous, blessed. You carry piss beneath their gaze. Their thread eyes follow you, and you swear they smirk. A servant passes you without a glance. You consider asking him where to dump it, but then remember, that's not his job. That's yours. The fools. Jester of mirth, carrier of human waste. By the time you reach the stairs, your arms ache from pretending it's not disgusting. You breathe through your mouth, which helps until you remember the warmth curling up through your palms. You nearly gag. A knight clatters past you, his armor gleaming, his sword singing against the scabbard. He pauses just long enough to see what you're carrying, and mutters, "Gods help us," like you're the thing that needs purging. Down the servants' stairs, past the kitchen where the scullions laugh over bread crusts and greasy broth. One of them waves. "Careful there, Jingles," he says, pointing to your burden with a grin. You drop that, and you'll be performing from a puddle. You force a smile and keep walking. The pit is behind the stables, a round stone hole in the earth that smells like every bad decision made flesh. You brace yourself, tip the pot, and let it go. It hits with a wet slap, lost among hundreds like it. You imagine it merging with the rest. Your contribution to the castle's hidden foundation. No plaque will bear your name, but it will be there, festering. You rinse the pot from a bucket nearby, but the smell never fully leaves. It's in your nose, under your nails, behind your eyes. You'll be tasting it by supper. You bring it back, cleaned and cooled. She doesn't look at you. You set it down with care, as though it contains her dreams, not her excrement. She waves you away. 2 steps out the door. A page blocks your path. Viscount Brannigan needs you. The pot is still warm in your hands when the second one's pressed into your arms. This one's metal, embossed with lions. Regal piss. By the 4th pot, your sense of smell gives up entirely. It's not that the odor fades. It simply becomes the new ground level of existence. You're no longer repulsed. You're resigned. The worst part isn't the weight or the smell or the slipperiness of the handles slick with dew and decay. It's the laughter. Not loud, not open, but always there. A snort here, a snicker there. You are the punchline even when you aren't telling jokes. Once, you ask, half in jest, half in despair, why the chamber pots come to you when surely someone else could carry them. The answer is simple. You're already dressed for disgrace, and that's it. It becomes part of your day. Wake up, stretch, try not to cry, carry the remains of dukes and dames. Some pretend not to see you. Others smile as they hand you the pot like it's a game. One young lordling holds his nose and mimics your walk behind you as you retreat down the corridor. When you turn, he shrieks with delight and calls it your new act. It is. One night, after 3 pots and no dinner, you find a note slipped under your straw. The true jester balances filth and grace. You don't know who wrote it. You suspect the cook, or the chaplain, or no one. Maybe it's just the mice playing tricks again. You whisper it to yourself the next morning as a countess hands you hers with the flourish of a queen knighting a toad. You nod, bow, and cradle the vessel like a newborn. You are a joke, but you carry it with care, because some things, if dropped, will never wash off. It starts with one night. Drunk, sharp-tongued, too proud of his own voice to let silence survive more than a moment. You're doing your rounds, sweeping the corridor outside the royal chambers, when he spots you, bells faintly chiming as you bend. He smirks, nudges the lord beside him, and announces to the air, "Watch your step, lads." Jingles has returned from his noble quest to chase his dignity. The others laugh, and that should be it. A passing insult, forgettable, but something in it sticks. The rhythm, the sound, the way it echoes in the stone corridor like it belongs there. Jingles. You don't respond. You're not supposed to. But that silence seals it. The next morning, it's waiting for you before breakfast. "Jingles, fetch me that stool," one noble calls out from across the hall. "Jingles, the queen has dropped her fan." Another snickers. The cook says it casually while handing you a bucket of carrot peels. The stable boy yells it over his shoulder. It wraps itself around your name and squeezes. By noon, it's a part of the castle's vocabulary. Jingles the fool, Jingles the turnip tosser, Jingles the royal rat catcher, Jingles who tripped on his own shoes, Jingles who tried to tell a joke and instead told a truth. And no one says your real name anymore. You try once, just once, to correct someone. A new chambermaid, giggling as she passes, says, "Morning, Jingles." And you answer, too quickly, "Actually, it's..." But the sentence dries up halfway out, because the way she looks at you, not cruel, not kind, just blank, makes it clear. She doesn't know, she never knew. You are Jingles. That's all she's ever been told. That night, as you fold your costume over the stool beside your straw bed, the bells on the cap rattle against the stone. They jingle, loudly, cheerfully, mockingly. You pick up the cap and shake it, hard, as if you could silence them through force alone. But they're stitched too well. They are part of the fabric, just like the name. At court, your presence is now announced with flair. Ah, the mighty Jingles graces us with his wit. A duchess calls across the banquet. The guests chuckle. Even the king chuckles. You try to bow, but it comes out clumsy. Too stiff, too human, not enough fool. You're expected to answer to it. If someone says, "Jingles," and you don't turn, they accuse you of arrogance. If you flinch, it only delights them more. "He's sensitive," they croon. "He knows his name." Clever little clown. You learn to respond without thinking. A tilt of the head, a rehearsed grin, a deflection joke, a mumbled rhyme. You adapt, the way a tree does to wind, by bending, not breaking. But each syllable erodes something. A part of you peels away every time they use it. You're not sure what's left beneath. One day, a scribe passes you in the corridor and mutters it not as a joke, but as a fact. "Pardon, Jingles." No laughter, no wink, just acceptance. That's when you understand it's over. It's not a nickname anymore. It's your name. You try writing your old one on a scrap of parchment that night. You scratch it into the margin of an old ledger you found near the kitchens, just to see it again, just to make sure it's still real. But the letters feel foreign under your fingers, like you're forging someone else's name. You tear the parchment and burn it in the candle flame. In the great hall, someone makes a song, a little ditty, nothing elaborate, just 5 lines about a fool with bells and no brain. Oh Jingles, the master of jest. His jokes are all rotten, but he tries his best. It's catchy, too catchy. The scullery maids hum it while they work. A stable hand whistles it while brushing a horse. The song follows you from hall to hall, stitched into the tapestry of castle life like mold on bread. You start to wonder what would happen if you left. If you stole away at night, past the outer gates, across the fields. If you walked into a village and said, "My name is," and paused, waiting to remember it. Would it sound real? Would they believe it? Or would they hear the jingle in your step, the trained rhythm in your voice, and laugh before you ever opened your mouth? One evening, a child visiting court points at you. "Look, Mama, it's Jingles." She squeals. You kneel, force a smile, Tap your nose like you've practiced. But something in her gaze is different. She looks at you not with amusement but ownership, as if you belong to her already. A story she's heard, a character she expects. You realize, too late, that you are no longer a person. You are a part of the court, like the tapestries, like the goblets, like the rats, and you are branded, not with iron, but with a word. Jingles. The clatter of wooden spoons echoes louder than it should in the great hall. The nobles are drunk on wine and boredom, which is always when the worst ideas take root. You're summoned from the corner with a slurred bellow. Jingles to arms. At first, you think it's just another call for a jest or a jig, but then they toss the spoon at your feet like it's a gauntlet. The thing's nearly as long as your forearm, carved from oak and sticky with remnants of some royal stew. Your opponent is already stumbling forward, another fool from the kitchens roped into tonight's spectacle. He's bigger, meatier, sweat shining on his forehead like varnish. He grins nervously, which means he doesn't like this any more than you do. The crowd parts to make a ring around the two of you. Benches are dragged back, goblets refilled, bets placed. The queen's cousin leans in to shout, "Who bleeds first buys the wine," and is met with howls of approval. You're handed a dented pot lid as a shield. Someone ties a napkin around your neck like a cape. You're a knight now, apparently. A knight of laughter and bruises. The first blow comes too quickly. You barely raise the lid before the spoon smacks your shoulder with a wooden thud that numbs your entire arm. The crowd cheers. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't clever. Just pain. And they loved it. You retaliate. Not because you want to, but because the alternative is worse. You jab forward with your own spoon, catching your opponent on the hip. It makes a hollow thunk. He winces but doesn't stop. His next swing clips your ear, and you stumble. Your bell-lined cap slides sideways, one tip flopping over your eye. They laugh even harder. You can hear their joy, real, belly-deep laughter, the kind you've been chasing for weeks through pratfalls and puns, and now they find it in violence, in spectacle, in watching you fumble and flail. You are not telling a joke. You are the joke. Another strike, this one to the ribs. The spoon splinters slightly on impact. You gasp, but your opponent looks apologetic. He mouths sorry before stepping back. You nod. It doesn't matter. It's not about either of you. Your props, punchlines in motion. They demand more. "Lick his boot!" someone yells. "Make it a duel of honor," cries another. "Hit him where it hurts." You glance down, raising your shield just in time to block a low swing aimed at your stomach. The force drives you backward into the legs of a nobleman who spills his wine on you and calls it collateral damage. Your hands are shaking now, not from fear, but fatigue. The spoon is heavy, absurdly so, and your arms ache from the weight of pretending this is still play. You swing again, weakly, and the edge of your spoon catches your opponent's cheek. A line of red appears. The room goes silent for a heartbeat, then erupts. They cheer like it's a tournament, like a knight has fallen, like history has been made. You don't know whether to bow or run. Your opponent stares at you, stunned, one hand cupping his bleeding face. The queen's cousin claps you on the back hard enough to knock the wind out of you and roars, "Jingles wins." You try to smile, but your lip is split from an earlier blow. It stings. The taste of blood creeps into your mouth. Someone shoves a goblet into your hand, and you down it out of reflex. It burns like fire, like vinegar, like victory laced with humiliation. You're paraded around the hall. The winner, the champion of wooden spoons. You can't lift your arms. Later, in your chamber, if you can call it that. You peel off your tunic and find the bruises already blooming like dark violets across your ribs and back. You touch one gently and hiss through your teeth. There's a laugh in the hallway, someone passing by. You know they're still talking about the fight. They'll want more tomorrow. You sit on the straw, head in hands, cap tossed across the room. The bells are silent now. Even they know the difference between comedy and cruelty. Your opponent never comes to check on you. Maybe he's too embarrassed. Maybe he's more hurt than you. Maybe he just doesn't want to see your face again. You can't blame him. The worst part isn't the pain. It's that for a moment, one bright, twisted moment, you mattered. You were the center, the star. You were what they wanted. And they only wanted you when you bled. The great hall smells of wine and sweat and too much roasted meat. The kind of thick, sticky air that clings to your throat and makes it hard to tell if you're dizzy from the heat or the fear. You're already standing in the middle of it before you realize what's happening. Drawn in like a fly to rot, summoned with a drunken command and 2 claps that meant either dance or die, depending on the mood. Tonight it's die, or at least bleed in a way that amuses us. The spoons are already there, carved from wood but long and thick, more club than utensil. They're not weapons, not really, but they hurt all the same. You know because you've done this before. Every time, the rules change. Every time, the laughter stays the same. Your opponent is Thomas, the undercook's cousin, big, soft-eyed, and hopelessly slow. He's already sweating through his borrowed tunic, shifting from foot to foot like he might bolt. But he won't. None of you ever do. Not unless you want to be whipped before the next course. A voice calls from the dais. Sir Hamwick, drunk and pink-faced, the man who once tried to make you juggle live frogs. To the victor, he declares, a golden crust of duck pie. To the loser, he pauses for effect, swaying slightly. Another go, against someone meaner. 1-7, and with ways with a dard. That's how it goes. A servant ties a silk ribbon around your bicep like a knight's favor. The gesture is so absurd it makes your stomach turn. You want to laugh at it, but you know how laughter sounds in this room. It's a weapon, and tonight it's not yours. Someone throws the first spoon. You catch it just before it hits the floor. The second lands with a dull thunk at Thomas's feet. There's no ceremony, no starting horn, just the growing roar of anticipation. Then, a clap. You lunge without thinking. It's better that way. Thinking gets in the way of survival. Your spoon smacks into Thomas's shoulder, sending him stumbling back, but he recovers faster than you expect. His swing catches your hip, and you curse at how much it stings. The room erupts. Someone yells, "Hit his hat off!" Another shouts, "Break his bells!" You circle, spoons raised, eyes darting. You try to play it like it's still a game, like you're in control. You dip and dodge with exaggerated grace, mugging for the crowd, hoping the pretense of comedy will keep the blows lighter. It doesn't. Thomas swings again. This time it's higher, closer, and you're too slow to duck. The spoon crashes into your jaw. Not hard enough to break bone, but enough to rattle your teeth. You drop to one knee. The hall explodes in cheers. They like it when you fall. Blood creeps into your mouth, warm and metallic. You taste it before you feel it. A split lip, maybe. Or your tongue. You can't tell. You spit, and the red smear on the stone floor seals it. You've officially become entertainment. More! Someone screams. Don't let up. Thomas hesitates. You see it in his eyes. He's sorry, even now. You almost feel bad for him. He didn't ask for this either, but the crowd is chanting now. Hit him, hit him, hit him, and mercy has no place between bread courses. So he swings. You block it with the spoon, barely. The wood cracks. Yours, not his. Another hit to your arm numbs the fingers instantly. You stumble backward into a stool, trip, crash down. The hall shakes with glee. You try to rise, but a hand pushes you back. Sir Hamwick. He leans down, breath reeking of wine and privilege, and says, "Don't you dare end the night early, Jingles." You hate the name more in that moment than ever before. Thomas pulls you up. Not gently, but not cruelly either. Just enough to get you back on your feet. Just enough to keep the show going. You want to tell him to swing low this time. Maybe take out a knee and get it over with. Instead, you step back, steady yourself, raise your spoon. You pretend to trip forward. The swing that meets you wasn't planned. It lands full across your chest, knocking the wind out of you. You double over. Your vision swirls. You hear applause, booming and wild, like you just delivered the performance of your life. And maybe you have, because nothing you've ever said, no pun or punishing tumble, has ever gotten a reaction like this. This isn't laughter. It's something sharper, something hungry. You kneel, one palm on the floor, the other clutching your cracked spoon. You consider staying down. You wonder if they'd care. They don't. They're already turning away, distracted by the next dish being brought in. Someone mutters, "Well done, Jingles." But they don't look at you. They never really do. The moment passes. You are forgotten. Thomas helps you up again, and this time, you lean on him. Not because you want to, but because your legs won't work right. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You both know what this was. Tomorrow, they'll laugh again. Not because of anything you said, but because of the bruise blooming on your face, or the way you limp down the corridor, or how you flinch when someone raises a toast. They'll say, "Remember the duel?" and chuckle, and you'll nod and smile and say, "Of course, it was hilarious." Because in this castle, pain is funny, as long as it's not theirs. The hall is quieter now, but not still. Nobles do not sleep so much as they fade into other rooms to poison one another with words. The torches hiss low and orange in the sconces, casting fat shadows that grow ears. You've learned to move through them carefully, eyes lowered, bells stilled, breath held. Because here, silence listens back, and it remembers. You're meant to be invisible when you're not performing, but somehow, you're never unobserved. They watch you in the way they watch the hounds at a hunt, curiously, cruelly, and always for signs of usefulness. And tonight, you're useful. You were crouched near the stairwell, trying to rub the dried duck fat off your slipper with a scrap of your sleeve when you heard it. Two noble women, voices soft as silk and twice as sharp, murmuring by the tapestries. Their silhouettes danced across the stone, like conspirators in a shadow play. "He brought her pearls, real ones," the taller said. "Not for his wife, mind you." The other gasped like a child told a bedtime murder. You weren't meant to hear, but they talk louder when they think you don't matter. They assume jokes and secrets live in separate rooms. They're wrong, because later that night, during the post-feast lull when wine softens their throats and shame loosens their collars, you performed. Nothing too bold, just a little rhyme, a bouncing cadence to amuse the half-asleep Duke with his goblet tipped sideways. But the punchline, oh, the punchline, something about a nobleman, a pearl necklace, and a woman who wasn't his. It landed like a dropped sword, gasps first, then laughter, scattered and raw, then the glances, razor sharp, targeted like arrows mid-flight. You saw the color drain from one man's face at the high table. His wife blinked once, slow and silent, then turned her head with the cold precision of a guillotine being lowered. And that's how it starts. You didn't name names. You never do. You don't have to. That's the trick. Let them fill in the blanks with their own guilt. They'll do it every time. You weren't dragged out or struck for it. That would have made it worse. No. You were applauded, patted on the back by greasy fingers, handed a half-empty goblet and told you were wicked clever. But after that, the glances began to linger longer, not admiring, measuring. You can feel them now, days later, sliding down your back like cold oil. They want to know how much you know, but the truth is, you don't know much. You only repeat what they give you. You're the echo of their own poison, wrapped in rhyme and bells. You've become their favorite way to hear what they already fear. They don't trust each other. You've learned that. They trade gossip, the way merchants trade spices, measured, treasured, and often spiked with something lethal. And now, they trade it with you, too. You found a note tucked under your platter this morning. No signature, just a single line. Try jesting about the steward's absences. Beneath that, a coin, too heavy for kindness. You didn't joke, not yet, because you're starting to understand what this really is. You're the knife they throw with clean hands. You're the whisper with plausible deniability. If the joke lands and wounds, they laugh with the safety of surprise. If it backfires, they frown and say, "The fool has gone too far." And the whip is never far from that phrase. You walk the corridors now with your ears open but your mouth stitched. You nod when spoken to. You smile when summoned. You pretend you haven't noticed that the steward now walks with a limp and won't meet your eye. You pretend not to see the way Lady Mora's hand trembles when you walk past her table. She laughed too loud the night of the pearl joke. You remember. You always remember. The cooks talk too, though they don't bother with whispering. They say Lord Edric's dog was poisoned. They say Lady Beatha caught her daughter reading letters that weren't addressed to her. They say the fool's jokes are becoming pointed. You laugh along, not too loud, because you remember what happened to the last fool. They don't talk about him much, but once, while you were scrubbing grease from the hearthstones, a drunk knight muttered, "Least this one hasn't lost his tongue yet." Then he laughed alone and walked away. You didn't sleep that night. There's power in what you do. You see that now. But it's not power you wield. It's power that uses you, like a torch lighting the path for others, even as it burns itself away. You joke about pearls, and someone gets banished. You jest about the steward's limp, and someone disappears. You laugh, and someone cries behind a locked door, and still they cheer, because laughter is the only honest thing in this place, the only thing that can slip past the guards and the etiquette and the masks made of powdered wigs. Laughter breaks them open, and you're the hammer. You didn't ask for this, but the court doesn't ask. It appoints. It carves roles and shoves people inside them. You're not a man anymore. You're Jingles. You're a chorus line in the opera of betrayal. A walking confessional booth where nobles whisper sins and beg you to make them funny. Sometimes you do. Sometimes, when you're brave or tired enough, you don't. That's the real gamble. Not the whip, not the lash, not the spoiled food or spoiled moods. The gamble is, will today's joke start a fire you can't put out? You lie awake some nights and think of saying nothing ever again. But then morning comes, and they summon you, and the stage is set again. You bow low, the bells jingle, and once more, you choose your knife. The tavern is smaller than the hall, but it feels bigger, louder, alive in a way the castle never is. The rafters drip with smoke, the floorboards creak beneath boots that have actually walked somewhere, and the smell is sweat and ale and horsehair instead of perfume layered over rot. You're shoved inside by a guard who tells you to make them laugh, as if the locals have ever wanted to laugh at anyone in Bells. The door shuts behind you, and for the first time all day, you're surrounded by people who don't bow to crowns or titles. They only bow to coin, and sometimes not even then. You try to start small, a jest about chickens crossing roads, or what counts for roads in mud-rutted villages. A few heads turn. One man spits into the straw. Another woman cackles, but not because of the joke, because she saw you flinch when the spit landed near your boot. They've already spotted weakness. The court enjoys the pretense of laughter. The tavern doesn't need pretense. They'll strip you down to bone with it. "Dance for us, Jingles," someone calls. The name has traveled faster than you have. You feel the sting of it in your chest, but you bow anyway, bells chiming like coins you'll never see. You dance a clumsy reel across the floor, avoiding puddles of ale, pretending to trip on a bench. A small child giggles and claps. His father cuffs him on the ear. "Don't waste joy on this one," he mutters. You hear it. You're meant to. They demand stories. Not polished courtly tales, but the raw ones. You give them the knight who fought a goose routine, and for the first time that night, you hear laughter not gilded with cruelty, but carved out of recognition. Because they know geese. They've been chased across fields by hissing beaks, flapped at while carrying buckets of water. They laugh because they've lived it, not because it's clever. The sound is rough, cracked, real. You almost like it. Almost. Then someone throws a bone at your chest and shouts, "Tell one about yourself." The hall falls quiet, all those smoky eyes on you. You could lie, spin something harmless, but you know better. They want truth, but the kind of truth you can bleed from. So you say, "What's the difference between me and a chamber pot?" At least the chamber pot gets emptied. It lands. Hard. They howl. One man slaps the table until his mug topples. Another wipes his eyes with his sleeve. You laugh too, but it's a hollow sound, the kind that tastes like copper in your mouth. They're not laughing at a role you play. They're laughing at you, the husk inside the motley. And yet, in the mess of it, there's something strangely honest. No velvet gloves, no poisoned compliments, just mockery, sharp as a blade but clean in its cruelty. The tavern wants no illusions. The nobles make you a mirror for their vanity. The villagers make you a mirror for their pain. They drink to forget the fields, the taxes, the hunger gnawing at their children's bellies. They laugh at you because if they don't, they'll scream. And screaming doesn't fill a cup. By the end of the night, your throat is raw from shouting over their noise. Your cheek stings where a mug clipped you when they decided the punchline wasn't strong enough. Your knees ache from kneeling on splintered wood after someone demanded you beg for their amusement. But when you leave, limping out into the cold air, you feel less hollow than you did in the great hall. Because the laughter here, cruel as it was, at least belonged to people who understood what it meant to be crushed by the weight of something bigger than yourself. They mocked you like kin. The court mocks you like property. It's not a comfort, but it is a difference. And in that difference, you taste something that might almost be respect. They call it a festival, but it feels like a sentence. The whole village gathers in the square, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, mud churned into a living thing beneath their boots. You're dragged out from the castle by guards who wear grins too wide, like they've been waiting all year for this. They don't bind your wrists. They don't have to. You know better than to resist. Resistance makes it worse. Resistance makes them laugh harder. They shove you forward into the mob. Fingers claw at your motley, tugging at bells until they jangle like alarm bells warning of your own ruin. Children shriek with delight, not fear, as they clutch at your sleeves and smear dirt across your face. Someone shoves a broken reed crown onto your head, jagged edges digging into your scalp. "Behold the king!" A voice roars. The cheer that follows is thunder. It swallows you whole. They hoist you onto a cart and wheel you through the streets. You're meant to wave, so you do. A parody of majesty, your wrist limp, your grin grotesque. The crowd howls. They chant nonsense rhymes about kings who farted themselves to death, about fools who mistook muck for wine. Every verse ends with your name. Jingles. Always jingles. The word is sticky in their mouths, clinging to you like tar. The crown slips down over your eyes. You push it back up, but each time you do, someone knocks it askew again. You're not supposed to look dignified. You're supposed to look ridiculous. The mock king of mud and mockery. You've become their effigy, their outlet, their carnival sign-eater. For one day, the fool is king, and for one day, the king is fool enough to let it happen. They march you to the square where a throne of barrels and broken crates waits. You're shoved onto it, legs sinking into the uneven wood, splinters biting through the motley. They crown you again, this time with a wreath of nettles that burns your skin with every movement. The court assembles. A drunk priest with his robes inside out, a butcher wielding a pig's skull as a scepter, two whores dressed in stolen veils pretending to be saints. They all bow low, exaggerated, before erupting into jeers. Then the food begins. At first, it's crusts of bread, tossed like alms. You catch one, thinking maybe you'll eat later. The crowd roars at your hunger. A boy hurls a rotten apple. It bursts against your shoulder, spraying brown mush down your sleeve. A cabbage follows, hard enough to make you flinch. The square howls with laughter. The more you cower, the more they cheer. You try to turn it into performance. Pretend to juggle a bruised pear, bow after taking a splash of curdled milk to the chest. But the act collapses quickly. You can't control their rhythm. They don't want rhythm. They want spectacle. Something sour splatters across your cheek. Egg. The stench of it makes your stomach lurch. You wipe it away with the back of your hand, but the smear only spreads. The priest raises his mock scepter and declares, "All hail the king who reeks of chicken's revenge." The crowd doubles over, slapping their thighs. You choke down bile and force a smile. A fool who doesn't smile is just a man being punished. But there's no limit. They keep coming. Radishes, turnips, meat gone slimy with age. A fish carcass slaps against your leg and slides to the ground. Someone launches a tankard of ale that misses your head by inches, but soaks you from the neck down. You blink through the spray, shivering in your wet clothes, teeth rattling. You try to laugh, but your throat cracks instead. They cheer louder, mistaking pain for commitment. The children are the worst. They climb onto the cart, clutching at you with sticky hands, smearing mud across your cheeks as they squeal. One girl forces a dead rat into your lap. The crowd explodes at your grimace. You're their plaything, their doll, their scapegoat. You've never been more aware of how fragile your body is, and how powerful their joy is when it collides with your suffering. The ritual ends only when the sun dips, when the air turns sharp and the villagers grow tired. They topple your throne and you with it. You hit the mud face first, the crown of nettles snapping against your skull. The crowd disperses, satisfied, carrying their laughter home like spoils. The guards haul you upright, drag you back toward the castle, not bothering to clean you. You're still dripping yolk when they shove you into the scullery. Later, when you peel off your motley and wring it out over the basin, the stench of rot clings to you. It won't leave, not with scrubbing, not with time. You sit on the floor, back against the stone, hair still slick with egg, and realize this is the only time you've ever worn a crown. And even then, it was only so they could throw things at you. The square smells of iron and damp wood, the kind of smell that clings to rope and lingers in your teeth. The crowd has gathered early, their faces bright with the promise of spectacle. You are marched to the platform not because you're condemned, but because someone thought it would be clever to make the fool dance while a man's neck learns silence. The irony tastes bitter, though you smile as you always do, because the smile is the only armor you're allowed. The rope hangs center stage, already tied, already creaking in the morning wind. It moves like it knows what's coming. The executioner stands beside it, hood drawn low, hands steady in a way yours never are. He doesn't need bells or motley. His uniform is finality. You want to hate him, but there's nothing to hate. He's just another servant, like you. Only his jokes end faster. They shove you forward to the edge of the platform. The condemned man stands a few feet away, wrists bound, eyes glassy from a night without sleep. You're told to warm up the crowd, like this is a feast and not a funeral. So you bow, bells jingling, and force a rhyme about rope being the kingdom's newest fashion. It earns a ripple of laughter, thin and sharp-edged. They're not laughing because it's funny. They're laughing because it makes the waiting easier. You juggle 3 apples, someone thrust into your arms. One slips, rolls near the prisoner's boots. He doesn't move. His gaze is fixed on the horizon, as if he can will himself past it. You pick up the apple, polish it on your sleeve, and toss it high. The crowd claps. The rope sways with the motion, a silent metronome marking time until the end. When you trip over the executioner's block deliberately, they howl. When you bow low and nearly topple off the stage, they shriek with glee. Every pratfall buys the condemned another breath. You don't know if that's mercy or cruelty. His shoulders twitch once, almost like laughter, but it could be a sob. You wonder if your antics feel like mockery to him, a jest at the expense of his last minutes. You wonder if he'll die hating you. Perhaps that's the point. The guard bellows the charges. Theft, rebellion, blasphemy. You stop listening. The words are a script. You've heard them before. You'll hear them again. What matters is the rope, and how it creaks as the executioner tests it with his thick hands. You make a joke about knots, about how your own motley is tied better, but your voice cracks halfway through. They laugh anyway. You wish they wouldn't. The crowd shifts, restless. They want the moment. They didn't come for you. Not really. You're garnish on a plate, already served. But you see their eyes dart between the condemned and you, as though uncertain which figure deserves more attention. The man about to die, or the man paid to mock the death. The line blurs, and for one sick heartbeat, you imagine it's you with the noose waiting. The executioner gives you a look from beneath the hood. Just one glance, steady and unreadable. He doesn't speak, but you understand. This isn't your stage. It's his. You nod almost imperceptibly and step aside, bells jingling faintly in the hush. The condemned is guided forward. The rope lowers. The square holds its breath. You bite the inside of your cheek until you taste blood, because you can't laugh now, not even for show. The creak of the rope is louder than every joke you told combined. When the trapdoor slams, the sound swallows everything. The laughter dies instantly, like it was hanged too. The body swings. The crowd exhales. Some cheer, some weep. Most just nod as though a debt has been paid. You stand at the edge of the platform, motley stained with apple juice and mud, and wonder which of you they'll remember tonight. The man who dangled, or the fool who danced beside him. When it's over, you're dismissed with a coin tossed at your feet. You pick it up, though it feels heavier than any crown they've ever mocked you with. You tuck it away and walk off the platform, bells jingling with each step. For the rest of the day, you can't tell if the sound belongs to you, or if it's just the rope still swaying in your ears. The courtyard is buzzing before you even arrive, a crowd of lords and ladies spilling out of the hall as though the day's feast wasn't enough. They're restless, eager, bored, in that dangerous way that always ends with you in the center of their amusement. You're dragged forward, bells jangling against your will, and the words come before you can even register them. Wrestle the beast. The chant rises, crude and gleeful. Wrestle the beast. You glance around, expecting something monstrous, some hound bred for blood or a boar with tusks like daggers. What they bring out instead is a goat. Small, shaggy, brown as churned mud, with horns that curve just enough to look comic. It chews absently at a piece of straw, uninterested in the spectacle. The crowd howls with delight at the sight of it, because already the joke is perfect. The fool against the goat. You try to laugh with them, but the sound curdles in your throat. The guards prod you forward, and the goat's eyes fix on you, horizontal pupils, flat and alien, as if they've already measured your worth and found it lacking. You bow mockingly to it, which earns a roar from the crowd. The king calls out, "Show us your strength, little fool. Earn your supper." And you know there's no escape, not unless you want to be whipped bloody before dessert. You circle the goat, arms raised in a parody of wrestling stance. The goat doesn't move, it just chews. Someone shouts, "He's already winning," and the laughter spikes. You lunge, meaning to grab its horns, to end this farce quickly. But the goat springs sideways with surprising grace, and your hands close on nothing but air. You stumble, bells clanging, and the crowd erupts. The goat charges before you can recover. Its head slams into your thigh with the force of a hammer. Pain blossoms, white hot, and you collapse to one knee. They cheer louder. The goat steps back, lowers its head again, and waits. Even the animal understands that the performance isn't over. You scramble up, wobbling, trying to keep dignity stitched into your motley. You feint left, then dive right, arms closing around its wiry body. For a moment, victory is yours. You have it, you can lift it, you can end this. But the goat kicks, hard. Hooves catch your ribs, your chest, your pride. The breath rushes out of you in a strangled grunt. You drop it, stagger back, nearly topple into the king's lap. The goat trots a small circle and bleats, smug and mocking. The chant begins again, this time in rhythm. Goat, goat, goat. It rolls like thunder, shaking the courtyard. You, the fool, are forgotten in the chant. You are just a prop to highlight the goat's glory. You make one last desperate charge, hoping to tackle it, to win back something, anything. But the goat sidesteps, almost daintily, and you sprawl face first into the mud. The animal plants one hoof squarely on your back and bleats again. The crowd howls like it's the funniest thing they've ever seen. Maybe it is. They declare the goat the victor. A wreath of flowers is draped over its horns. Someone even crowns it with your own jester's cap, bells jingling proudly as it prances. You lie in the mud, panting, ribs screaming, while the nobles clap and throw coins. Not to you, but to the goat's keeper. Later, limping back to your chamber, you hear the whispers start. Servants grin as you pass. Seen our new king? 4 legs, better balance. Children in the kitchens bleat whenever you enter. Even the knights, armored and proud, can't resist miming horns and charging at you in mock battle. You become the butt of a new joke, one that spreads faster than wine at a feast. You lost to a goat. The memory does not fade. It clings, stitched into every snicker, every sly glance. Weeks pass, and still they remind you. At supper, they toss cabbage at your feet and shout, "Careful, Jingles, it might bite." In the courtyard, someone ties a bell around a goat's neck and calls it your twin. Even the king, bored and cruel, muses aloud. Perhaps next time we'll pit him against a sheep, see if he fares better against wool than horns. You dream of it at night, the weight of the hoof on your back, the sound of their laughter. You wake with mud still in your mouth, though you know it's only the taste of humiliation. You wonder if the goat even remembers. Probably not. To the animal, you were just another obstacle. To the court, you are a story to retell until the joke dulls. To yourself, you are proof that even beasts have more dignity than fools. And still, every time the bells on your cap jingle, you hear the chant echo back. Goat, goat, goat. The king's mood poisons the hall before he even speaks. You can feel it in the air, thick as smoke, the way courtiers shuffle their feet too quietly, the way servants hold their breath as they pass wine cups. No one looks directly at him. Even the fire seems to burn more carefully, wary of sending sparks his way. You know that mood well. It is the kind of silence that waits for someone, anyone, to break it. And today, that someone will be you. You're called forward after supper, the taste of grease still clinging to your tongue. You bow low, bells whispering instead of ringing, and you pray for mercy. The king doesn't look at you, not really. His gaze is fixed on the far wall, where a tapestry shows a battle he won years ago. He hasn't won anything today. You can tell. His jaw is tight, his goblet still full. That's never a good sign. Make us laugh, he says, and the words scrape across the stones. It isn't a request. It never is. But tonight, it sounds like a warning. Your mind spins through your repertoire, searching for something harmless, something light, silly, toothless. You choose a story about a pig who thought himself a knight. You juggle a few stale rolls to keep rhythm, voice pitching high and low, all the usual tricks. But halfway through, you add a line you've told a dozen times before. And the pig said, "At least I don't wallow in mud as much as my master." The hall goes still. It's always been a safe line, always earned a chuckle, because everyone assumes it means someone else. But tonight, the king's head snaps toward you, eyes blazing with a fury you've only seen in rumors. His lips twitch, not into a smile, but into a snarl. For one heartbeat, you believe it's the last thing you'll ever see. The guards shift at the edge of the room, hands on hilts. The air is sharp, thin. You feel your body fold into a bow without thinking, words spilling out faster than breath. "A jest, my lord. Only a jest. A poor one. Forgive me." He doesn't answer at first. He just stares. The silence stretches until your knees ache against the stone. Then, slowly, he waves his hand. Not in pardon, in dismissal. Enough. You slink back, ears ringing with the weight of that single word. The hall exhales as though a storm has passed. But you know better. The storm is only waiting for the next fool to step into it. After that night, you learn to speak less. You smile, you bow, you dance, but your tongue hesitates. Every line feels like a blade turned inward. You bite down words until your jaw aches, until your tongue feels heavy with unsaid laughter. You trade jokes for pratfalls, cleverness for silence. It keeps you safe, for a time. But silence is its own crime. They notice. The nobles whisper that the fool has grown dull, that his wit has gone sour, that perhaps he's plotting something darker beneath the bells. A fool without words is too close to a man, and a man without power is dangerous. They prod you, bait you, demand cleverness on command. "Why so quiet, Jingles?" they taunt. "Has the cat stolen your tongue?" Or, "The king." You force a smile and shake your head, but their laughter cuts deeper than any whip. In your chamber, you rehearse lines into the straw, whispering jokes that will never leave the walls. You test them like poisons, measuring which ones might slip past without notice, which might taste bitter only later. You dream of laughter as it used to sound, before it became a weapon aimed at your throat. But when you wake, the memory of the king's glare silences even that. So you walk the halls like a ghost in motley, jingling bells that mean nothing. The king drinks, the nobles whisper, and you, the fool, balance on the narrowest edge of all, between speaking and silence, between life and the noose. And every time you open your mouth now, you wonder if this will be the joke that kills you. The kitchen heat is worse than the hall. Fires roar in stone ovens, smoke clings to your throat, and sweat runs down your temples into the corners of your eyes. They've sent you here not to perform, but to labor, a punishment disguised as service. "Let the fool bake the bread," one of the stewards said, and everyone laughed because of course you couldn't. You've juggled loaves, tripped over them, worn them on your head in jest, but never once made one. Bread is serious. Bread is survival. And now it's your task. The cook hands you a bowl of flour like it's a weapon you're unfit to hold. You stare at the pale mound, trying to remember what scraps you've overheard from scullions gossiping about yeast and rise. You add water, too much, then scrape in more flour to hide the mistake. It clumps under your nails, heavy and sticky, refusing to become dough. The cook snorts. You knead anyway, pressing down with hands used to pratfalls, not patience. Your arms ache, and the dough resists like a living thing, lumpy and stubborn. When it's shoved into the oven, you almost pray. You've never prayed for your jests, but you pray now, for mercy from fire, for something edible, for silence at the feast. Hours later, the bread is pulled out, blackened on one side, pale on the other. Dense as stone, its shape More weapon than meal. The cook shrugs. He doesn't care. It's not his name they'll laugh at tonight. He sets it on a tray and marches you into the hall. The feast is already underway. Nobles leaning back with their bellies swollen from meat and wine. The king waves a hand and demands the bread. The loaf is placed before him with mock ceremony. He tears it open. Steam escapes, thick and damp. He chews once, twice. His jaw works harder than it should. He swallows. The hall waits. Then, to your astonishment, he nods. Fill their plates. Slices are cut, uneven slabs thudding onto silver dishes. The nobles bite reluctantly at first, faces tightening at the weight of it, but none dare spit it out. They chew, slowly. The hall is quieter than you've ever heard it, the air filled only with the sound of jaws grinding through your bread. Even laughter takes too much breath, and for the first time, your failure feeds them. It isn't delight. It isn't applause, but it counts. Their stomachs grow heavy with your mistake, their mouths too full to mock you. You watch them chew, and a strange warmth creeps into your chest. You made something that entered their bodies and changed them, if only for a meal. You gave them silence. The king eats 2 slices, as if daring the rest to complain. No one does. A duke gnaws at the crust like it's leather. A lady breaks hers into tiny pieces, swallowing them like medicine. The hall is subdued, and in that hush, you feel an unfamiliar thing. Power. Not the sharp, dangerous power of a joke, but something duller, heavier. Sustenance. When the plates are cleared, no one speaks of it. They move on to the next dish, the next toast, the next cruel amusement. But you sit at the edge of the hall, crumbs stuck to your fingers, and know you've done something they can't take away. You failed. You baked stones instead of bread. And still, they ate. That night, back in your chamber, you turn a scrap of the crust over in your hands. It's hard enough to chip a tooth. You bite it anyway. It hurts. It tastes of smoke and salt and something bitter, but it's yours. The bread doesn't mock you. It doesn't laugh. It only fills. For the first time, you think maybe there's a freedom in failure that performance never gives. Not joy, not pride, just weight. Something to hold in your hands that isn't applause or humiliation. Something solid. It is heavy, lumpy, imperfect, and it is enough. At first, it cuts sharper than any whip. Children in the courtyard pointing, chanting your name in that sing-song rhythm children use when they smell blood in the air. Jingles, jingles, jingles. Every syllable is a stone skipping across your back. They mimic the sway of your bells, the stumble of your gait, the way you bow too low when the nobles bark. Their laughter is shrill, unpolished, merciless. It feels like a new layer of humiliation added to the pile you already carry. You try to walk past them, eyes low, pretending not to hear, but they chase you down the corridor, repeating it until the sound rattles inside your head. One boy tugs your motley sleeve and runs off squealing. Another girl drops to her knees, pretending to juggle invisible apples before toppling over in an exaggerated heap. They're mocking you with such skill you almost want to applaud. Almost. Instead, you clench your jaw and keep moving. It happens again the next day, and the next. Their games grow bolder. They grab sticks and pretend they're wooden spoons, clashing them in mock duels until one collapses dramatically, clutching his stomach. They crown each other with wreaths of weeds and shout, "Behold the King of Fools." Their voices echo through the courtyards long after they've scattered. You can't outrun it. Your own legend, cheap and cruel, trails you like a second set of bells. But then, something shifts. You're summoned to the kitchens one morning and find a group of them there, sprawled on the floor, playing some new game. 2 are pretending to be goats, charging at one another, while a third stumbles between them with a jingling belt tied around his head. When they see you, they freeze. Then, instead of laughing, they gesture for you to join. You be the goat this time, one says, grinning, and before you can protest, they're tugging you down into the dust. You play along because you have no choice, but something in their faces stops you short. They're not jeering, they're delighted. Their shrieks of laughter aren't sharpened into knives. They're bright, almost kind. When you butt one boy gently with your shoulder, he collapses as though you've slain him in combat, and the others fall into the straw, screaming with joy. For a moment, you're not mocked. You're part of their story. The next days blur with it. They begin to follow you willingly, little shadows trailing behind your bells. They skip in rhythm, chanting your name not as insult, but as song. They turn your pratfalls into rituals, tripping over imaginary stones and collapsing into one another's arms. When you shuffle past, they don't scatter anymore. They gather closer. In the evenings, you hear them in the courtyards, inventing verses about you. Jingles, jingles, tumbled down, tripped his bells and lost his crown. The rhyme circles through the air, over and over, until it's less a taunt and more a lullaby. Their parents shake their heads, but they don't stop it. Children need games, and you've become one. You catch yourself smiling sometimes when they sing, not because it's flattering, but it isn't, but because it's different from the laughter of the court. This laughter doesn't taste of cruelty. It's simple, human, born of repetition and play. They've taken your shame and softened it, made it into something they can hold in their small hands and pass around like a toy. You start to greet them on purpose. A silly bow, a crooked grin, a jingle of your cap. They roar with delight, not because they've humiliated you, but because you've given them permission to laugh. They chant your name louder, but this time it doesn't burn. It hums in your chest, warm and strange. The court still mocks you, of course. Nobles still sneer, servants still whisper. The king still narrows his eyes when your jokes edge too close. Nothing changes there. But in the gaps between cruelty, you find yourself waiting for the children's voices, for the sing-song rhythm of your name turned into something less poisonous, for the games that let you lose and still feel, in some twisted way, like you've won. One evening, after a long day of being paraded and slapped with words, you step into the courtyard and hear them. Jingles, jingles, they chant, spinning in circles, clapping their hands. They stop when they see you, wide-eyed, waiting for your reaction. You tip your cap, make your bells dance once, and the chant rises again, louder than before. For the first time, you don't hear it as mockery. You hear it as belonging. The doors of the hall swing shut behind you, muffling the echoes of laughter that chased you for hours. The night air strikes your face like cold water, and for a moment you just stand there, chest rising and falling, tasting freedom in the silence. Your bells tinkle faintly with each breath, but out here, they sound less like mockery and more like wind chimes abandoned in a forgotten garden. You pull the cap off, hold it in your hands, and step into the courtyard. The stones are slick with dew. You move slowly, one foot after another, until you're beyond the torchlight. The castle's glow fades, swallowed by the dark, and the stars stretch above you, vast, innumerable, sharp as shards of ice. You tip your head back. The bells slip from your fingers and land in the grass, but you don't care. You've spent all day being watched, measured, torn apart by eyes that never blink. Now, for the first time, eyes look down on you without judgment. The stars burn, steady and remote, and you feel smaller than ever. Smaller, but also lighter. The air is cool and thin, carrying no scent of grease or wine or sweat. No cries of nobles demanding jokes. No children chanting your name. Just the rustle of leaves, the scrape of a cricket somewhere in the dirt, the faint creak of the world turning. You stretch out on the damp grass, not caring that your motley stains darker with every breath. You stare upward until your vision blurs, and in the blur the stars seem to shift, gathering into shapes. A crown, a noose, a goat's horns. You blink, and the shapes dissolve again. They don't belong to you. They never did. And yet, there is honesty in their distance. The stars don't laugh when you fall. They don't cheer when you bleed. They don't whisper your nickname or weave rhymes about your failures. They shine the same on king and fool, knight and beggar, criminal and saint. They burn because that is what they do, not because anyone commands them. You envy them for that. Your body aches in every place it can ache. Your ribs remember the spoons. Your back remembers the hoof. Your face remembers the egg. You trace those bruises with your hands as though mapping a territory no one else can see. Each mark is a story, but none are yours to tell. They've been told already, twisted and retold in laughter that isn't yours. Out here, though, the stories fall away. There is only the beating of your heart and the endless sweep of sky. For once, silence doesn't feel like punishment. In the hall, silence is suspicion, a trap that forces you to fill it with sound before someone else fills it with steel. But under the stars, silence is soft. It stretches out like a blanket, a mercy you didn't know you needed. You don't have to dance or grin or juggle the pieces of yourself to fit someone else's hunger. You can just breathe. You wonder if the last fool found this place too, if he lay in the grass with nettles still burning his skin, staring upward, wondering why he was cursed to live as the jest of men when the heavens themselves offered no laughter. Maybe he asked the same question you do now, the one you dare not speak aloud in daylight. What if there's nothing funny about any of this? Your eyes sting, and you let them. No one is here to mock you for it. The tears track down into your hair, vanish into the earth, and the stars blur again. You breathe deep, filling your lungs with cold air, and for a heartbeat it feels like freedom. Not the kind you could ever hold on to, but the kind you can steal in moments. A scrap of mercy, as brief and bright as a falling star. You stay there until your back grows damp, until the chill seeps into your bones, until you can almost believe the world has forgotten your name. And when you finally stand, brushing grass from your sleeves, you don't put the cap back on right away. You carry it at your side, bells muted against your leg. You walk slowly, deliberately, back toward the castle. The stars remain overhead, burning in silence, and as you pass beneath the gate, you swear you hear them whisper, not laughter, not jeers, but something closer to truth. The doors slam behind you, and the noise of the feast is swallowed by stone. The air outside is colder than it should be, a slap of wind that cuts through the wine still clinging to your tongue. You stagger down the steps, your boots slipping on moss, until you're far enough away that the laughter can't chase you. For once, you don't hear your name stretched into rhyme, don't hear the scrape of knives against plates or the creak of the king's chair when he leans forward to watch you squirm. There is only night. The courtyard is empty, save for a bucket left overturned near the well and a cat stalking shadows. You move past them both, toward the meadow beyond the walls where grass bends under the weight of dew. Your legs ache from pratfalls, your ribs from mock duels, but you keep walking until the castle fades behind you, swallowed by distance. Then you look up. The stars are everywhere, cold, unblinking, sharp as the points of spears. They are not waiting for you. They are not watching you. They shine because that is what they do, indifferent to crowns and bells, to your bruises and broken jokes. Their silence is not cruel. It is simply silence. And after weeks of being filled and emptied by laughter that wasn't yours, it feels like mercy. You collapse into the grass, damp soaking through your motley. You don't care. The smell of earth is better than the stench of wine spilled on rushes. You press your palms into the soil and stare upward until the sky blurs, until the stars smear into pale rivers. You trace them with your eyes, linking them into shapes. A spoon, a crown, a rope. Always a rope. You blink, and the constellations scatter, reminding you they owe you nothing. Your breath slows. The bells on your cap, dropped beside you, lie still, No echo of laughter in them now, no command hidden in the jingle, just metal and grass, harmless at last. You close your eyes and listen. Crickets hum, an owl cries. The world outside the walls breathes differently, without expectation, without malice. You let it wash through you, a tide that cleanses without asking who you are. For once, you don't imagine what they will say tomorrow. You don't hear the children's chants or the nobles' jeers. You don't hear the king calling you forward. You only hear the rush of your own blood, steady, quiet, unamused. It strikes you that this, more than any act you've ever performed, feels true. Not the painted face, not the pratfall, not the forced grin, just the stillness, the ache, the sky. You wonder how many fools before you found their way here, sneaking out in the dark, desperate to look at something that could not laugh back. Maybe every one of them. Maybe this patch of grass remembers more sorrow than all the tapestries in the hall combined. You want to ask the stars if they recall those others, but of course they do not. They remember nothing. They only burn, and maybe that is the gift. You lie there until the cold seeps into your bones, until your body shakes, until you know you should rise, but you delay. You savor the quiet, the way your humiliation dissolves in the dark like salt in water. Tomorrow you will be dragged back, jingling and stumbling, the butt of another story. Tomorrow they will mock your silence as much as they mock your words. But tonight, the sky refuses to laugh. Tonight, the silence is yours. The hall is thick with smoke and wine, the kind of night where laughter rises too easily, where the king himself grows giddy with the power of his own voice. You've already stumbled through 3 jests, juggled pairs until one burst and sprayed juice across the queen's sleeve, mimed a duel with an empty goblet. Each act bought you another hour of safety, another chance to live past dawn. By now your body aches with the rhythm of it, but you bow again, because bowing is your trade. The king leans back on his throne, one hand resting on the hound at his side, the other swirling his goblet as though stirring the room itself. His eyes fall on you, not sharp, not cruel, but heavy, like the weight of a hand that's been resting there for too long. The hall hushes. For a fool, silence is more dangerous than laughter. You prepare yourself for insult, for command, for some new cruelty disguised as whim. Instead, his voice rolls through the hall, slow and strange. Here is my neighbor of laughter. The words hang in the air. Not dog, not beast, not toy. Neighbor. A word that implies sharing a wall, if not a world. A word that places you near, not beneath. It isn't respect, not really. It isn't kindness, not entirely. But it isn't contempt either. The courtiers murmur, uncertain. Some smirk, some roll their eyes, but no one dares challenge the king's mood. You bow again, lower than before, because you don't know what else to do. Your knees press into the rushes, and your bells brush the floor. Neighbor. You taste the word in your mouth, foreign as fruit from lands you'll never see. You are not his equal, you never will be. But for the first time, you are not called nothing. The feast continues. The nobles drink deeper, and their laughter grows reckless again. But you feel apart from it, as if a small cord has tethered you to something steadier. You perform the rest of the night in a daze, cartwheeling, capering, fetching spilled wine, and every time someone mocks you, the word hums in the back of your mind. Neighbor. Not king, not knight, not priest, but neighbor. Close enough to count. When the torches gutter low and the last goblets are drained, you stagger out into the corridor. The echo of the king's voice follows you, heavier than any jeer. You lean against the cold stone wall, pressing your forehead to it, and for a moment, the motley feels less like chains and more like a skin you chose. Survival has been your only victory, night after night, lash after lash, laugh after laugh. And now, survival has been given a name. You walk to your chamber slowly, straw waiting, damp and small. But tonight, the bells on your cap jingle softer, as if they too are surprised. You lie down, staring at the ceiling, and let the word repeat itself until sleep claims you. Neighbor, it is not freedom, it is not dignity, but it is something. And for a fool, sometimes something is enough.